Up here where it says recording,
Yeah.
I'm going to.
Okay. I'm gonna lower that. So, okay.
So am I clicking on the, well,
You're-
I don't have to click on the link because we're
We're
here.
here, yeah. So this is starting the policy committee meeting on September 15th at 4:12, sorry for the delay for those who are in the audience. So I'm just going to pull up my agenda. I didn't have it up. Okay.
And I'm one of these weird ones that has my password and somewhere else, so I have to.
No.
Come on. I'm not doing this again. I'll deal with this later.
Okay, I'm going to call us to
there?
order. Introductions. I'm Mary Gill, board chair.
Suzanne Buck.
Caitlin
Okay.
Steele, Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning.
Yes, and Lindsay Hexak will be with us shortly. She had an emergency. Looking at our agenda, any changes? We know that this agenda is pretty full right now. We'll get through as much as we can. Public comment. So we have some attendees, participants, Barbara Wilson and Tanya Scuteri. Is there anything you would like to contribute to this public comment? Raise your hand if so. Nope, no hands are raised. So we will continue with our agenda. Thank you for coming and joining us. Okay, so recommendations to approve our last meeting on July 12th.
Sure, I'll move to approve.
Okay, I'll second. And all in favor? Yep. Okay. Okay. So the next number,
Next item.
next item on our agenda is the flag policy motion. And after our last school board meeting on August 23rd, a request was made for other board members to offer some suggestions. And so I put these together in a document. It's called flag policy suggestions. And so we have a number of different items to look at. And then we can, if we'd like, use some of these suggestions or craft a variety of things together. But I think the two options that we're looking at are, will there be just a government, like a school board flag call of the whole that is only for government speech, and that means the US flag, the Vermont flag, and a flag of institutional significance. And the other option is to open up the opportunity for students to make a request to fly a flag, whether it be on our district flagpole or that we set up a different different pole completely or different place for students to have that freedom of expression. So if we can look at some of these options.
Can I ask a
Yeah.
clarifying question?
Yeah.
I think you named two options, and I think there's actually a third
There's
one in
third
there.
one here.
So one was that the flagpole is just for US flag, state flag, ID flag, essentially.
Right,
One is that we can have entertain student requests for a flag. And then the other one, I think, is number 2 here. The policy that, where is it? Can I just read this?
yeah,
out
this
loud?
one, this one
Yeah,
is.
sorry, I've been at lunch. so-
I'm gonna read it, I'm gonna read it out loud because I can't read quietly and think at the same time.
No, that's good, and that way our attendees can also participate.
So this number 2 is new, and it says, it is the policy of this board that the ACSD flagpoles located outside the primary entrance of any ACSD school are designated as government flagpoles. As such, the flags flown on these poles are limited to the flags of the United States of America, the state of Vermont, and the agency or organization certifying the instructional practices of our institution. In rare cases, the school board may, with a supermajority vote, choose to fly an additional flag for a limited time in acknowledgement of a significant social circumstance. Such a decision will reflect the expression of the board, and therefore only the board may initiate such an occurrence. So that's a third.
That
It's
is a
not
third.
student voice, it's board voice. on
It's
the
only
flag.
board voice, right? So yes, the options are just keeping the district flagpole for just US flag, Vermont flag, and flag of a curriculum, like the IB flag. The second is having a district flagpole, but then offering an option for students to have a separate flagpole or other way to display their freedom of expression. The third is this one, which the board would take consideration. The flagpole is primarily for a government flag, but on an occasion of social significance, the board would entertain the idea of looking at a student request.
Isn't there a fourth one?
There is a fourth one, and that is,
The board determines that the official MUHS flagpole is reserved only for flying the American flag, Vermont state flag, and IB flag,
right,
but decides to designate an alternative flagpole or space for student expression and develop a policy by which student requests for displaying signs, banners, or flags can be approved. Isn't this option 4 similar to what UVM has done?
yes, very much so. That's what UVM has done. But that is one of the options I had just mentioned, that one is just our flagpole and only US flag, government, state of Vermont flag. Keeping that district flagpole just for those 3 flags. The second option is it's only under, a significant rare situation can students or request something put on that flagpole. The third is that we'd have the district flagpole, but that we would offer the students an opportunity to have their own pole or other device to demonstrate their freedom of expression.
So they're actually 4.
And then the fourth one is, let's see, that the board,
Is reserving the flagpole only for American flag, Vermont state flag, and IB flag, which is very similar to several others,
right,
but then decides to designate an alternative flagpole or space.
so those are the same ones.
Well, and there's also a 5th one.
Yeah,
This is a lot of options, and then there's more.
right. Well, the what's on the bottom is the criteria that other schools have used when a student, like a procedure.
So the stuff at the bottom is, if we were going with the option where students can make a request
Yeah.
and the board is vetting it,
Right.
this would be a policy that would outline that vetting.
Right.
And we talked about that at the last board
Right,
meeting.
right.
So, so we're talking about only the official government
Right,
flags.
is one.
Only official government flags and board speech if the board by a supermajority says they want to stand behind
Mhm.
something. Or only the official flags, and student speech, if it goes through this process,
right,
or only the official flags, there's a separate flagpole and a process for getting a flag on it. That feels really complicated
Yeah,
to me.
yeah, to
Just,
me.
I mean, a second flag pole. So those are our 4 options.
Yeah.
I want to have share something about the IB flag.
Yes,
I'm a little bit worried about writing the IB flag into a policy for a number of reasons, but the big one, I mean, the really simple one is that one is faded and we can't
Yeah.
find another. Right? Like,
The
do
big
we
one.
really want to have a policy that says we're flying a flag and we can't actually
Yeah.
find a high quality flag to fly?
yeah,
When we tried to buy them, when all of our elementary schools were authorized, we were not able to find, they had stopped producing them. So even, I mean, that's just pragmatic.
right,
I'm not sure I can get good IB flags to fly. And also, I love IB. I totally have invested in that, and was excited to fly flags when we were authorized. And also, it is one of many organizations that we pay dues to and are a member of.
Mhm.
So I'm just naming those things.
you know, I think the whole idea of the IB flag being included was because it was already on there and people had asked, well, why is that on there?
And how it got there.
And how did it get there? And
Got there because we were excited and we flew a flag.
yeah, and it met the, you know, institutional significance that we are that kind of, but we don't, you know, that was just kind of thrown in there as, because it was already up.
Right, and I mean, and I'm not advocating, oh, we should definitely take it down, or, oh, we should definitely keep it up, as much as saying, I'm not sure we want to write it into a policy
Right,
if we can't sustain it.
right, okay. So should we take out, if that's one of our options, take out a flag of institutional significance? Should we remove that statement and just,
Well, maybe, I mean, if you look at the second one, this one that I said,
Yeah.
this is the new one,
yeah,
which is not the only new one, but I
Right.
named it that way.
yeah,
It
this is the
says-
newest one that came in.
It says, as such, the flags flown on these poles are limited to the flags of the United States of America, the state of Vermont, and the agency or organization certifying the instruct. So we would strike that last bit, the
Yeah.
agency or organization. And then it says, in rare cases, the school board may, with a supermajority vote, choose to fly an additional flag for a limited time. If we,
But then again,
the board could take a supermajority vote to continue to fly that IB flag.
Right.
If we took out the in rare cases,
Mhm.
and
But
I don't
the
know if
other-
it's significant social circumstance, but it would be so significant educational circumstance.
But I
suppose.
do like the piece where, you know, it's in both 3 and 4 that the flagpole is for the US flag and the Vermont flag. Whether or not we decide to fly an IB or whatever school association flag showing that we're like affiliated with. But I like the fact where the piece that I like about those is that it allows the students either their own flagpole or their own space that they can work within their confines of their student body, their student government, and work through and learn about these things.
I like that these honor student voice. What I wonder is, does the board need to get involved in that?
Well, that, and also, I mean, so I've said this before, is that, you know, is this truly a reflection of all the members in the high school? So have they asked every single person in that high school, do you want this flag raised? And they've all said resoundingly yes. I asked my own DEI committee at work, to help me process through all the different pieces. And they wanted to know, had everybody been asked, and do they all have the opportunity to give input into this? I don't know, are they still there? I guess Barb's
Fun's
still there.
not there anymore, Barb is.
Yeah,
If they've, been given the opportunity to give input, and if it truly reflects the feelings of the student body, or if it just reflects the feelings of a few. Another person in my committee also said, well, Suzanne, it could also make things a lot worse for people, because there might be backlash about putting that up. And then for some students, it could get worse. And I'm like, well, I certainly don't want to make things worse for anybody. And then other students have said that until things in the building actually change, no matter what the symbol is, it's not going to make anybody feel safe. So that's what I wonder about.
I don't think we'll ever get 100% per agreement on anything
Oh,
from any
no.
student body. So I know looking at, I think it was the Colchester one, it was a majority of the students, and we could put that into the procedure that there has to be a clear majority of students who want this form of expression in a public space. So it's not like, 4 people are gonna say, this is the flag we want this month, so we're gonna ask to put it up. It has to be, the guidelines are pretty clear that it has to be a majority of students, or a significant portion of the school supports that. And how did they decide, how did they get into the survey? And a lot of times, kids are passing out surveys, just sign this. Was there some discussion in student senate or whatever student body is, presenting this?
But I think you're in the details of
Yeah, that's the
how
details.
would we vet student voice? And what we're really talking about is, there are options wherein we could fly a flag and it would represent student voice,
Yeah,
in which case we would need to get into those details. But there are multiple options here where that doesn't exist, right? Hello, Lindsay.
Hi, Lindsay.
Hello,
Hi,
I'm
Lindsay.
How are you?
Sorry.
I thought I was gonna get here early, but
We understand your
my
position.
son Marius, I had to bring someone to the ER, and I was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
But whatever,
So-
I'm here. I'm so sorry. I hope I didn't.
No, you didn't. And I'm just going to announce that Lindsay Hexak has joined us as our committee person, because we started early without you.
Yes, but you had a quorum.
Yes, we
because
did
of
have a
our tiny
quorum.
little thing,
Right.
so.
And so what we're looking at, Lindsay, is the document I sent earlier with the different options. It's called flagpole options in Google Docs,
Flag policy options.
flag policy
Okay,
in
and
Google Docs.
I really feel like that meeting that I missed, that Monday meeting, I was on my way back from Maine. Didn't realize how I should have been there and I couldn't be. And it was the first meeting where
There was a vote.
I had a vote that would have mattered, and so,
But you know what? This is allowing us to fine tune it. So I
Yeah.
don't think you should feel guilty about
Yeah.
that.
I feel
well,
guilty.
but it's like, if I had voted, then we would have a different meeting today. So, I apologize if I'm not supporting the work of the
No, no.
policy committee the
No.
way that,
Gosh, no.
I could.
Sometimes delays are okay
In a
because it
way,
allows
yeah.
us to define.
Because it
and
was
see.
so evenly divided, maybe that was just meant to be.
Well, and this gets to the point here about whether or not we're talking about, I feel like that was one of the things that was dividing people, just sitting on the outside of that conversation
Mhm.
was this clearly delineating between student voice and government voice
Right.
felt
Mhm.
like a real sticking point, and having multiple options here allows us to sort of disentangle that.
Right,
Okay, I think I'm just now pulling up the document that your
yeah,
flag policy options, 9:15.
right.
Okay,
So one of the things that Caitlin had just brought up is when we talked about the government or the district flagpole and adding the baccalaureate flag on, that's not, maybe we should just eliminate that because there's other groups that we align with for our educational, objectives. This is only one, and this flag is not that easy to
the
pull together.
IB.
Right, so it was put up because they had it. It wasn't put up because it had any, so we don't
I
have to
agree with
include
that.
that in a policy.
I think the presence of that IB flag is really problematic in the context of what we're doing.
Yeah,
I think that an argument could be made that if that was put up so easily, then why not put anything up? And so I feel like we do need to, I agree, we need to address that.
Well, then let's not even discuss the flagpoles at the football field.
Right, no, no.
That.
I
didn't even
I
there
know
were
the history on
flagpoles.
those, because
Let's not do that now.
Yeah, we
Because
don't need
it'll
to go
take
down
us
that
down a
rabbit
rabbit
hole.
Yeah,
hole.
can we table, I think we should, but maybe when we have a little background to,
Well, we'll do that later.
Yeah.
Let's get
Add
through
that
this
to
one
the-
because
Is
this
it-
is,
Is it helpful and appropriate for me to go in here next to number 1 and say United States flag only? Like, that's the shorthand for what this means.
yeah, right. Good. That identifies, that's the
Right, that's
key
that,
one.
that's what
Yeah.
that policy statement is saying.
Good.
In practice. Okay, this one,
number 2.
number 2 is saying, US flag, Vermont flag, and flag of social significance.
yeah.
Representing board voice, right?
Right, this would be the board having to,
Representing board voice by supermajority.
right.
Is that
Yes.
characterizing that accurately?
can I ask about number 1? So the statute is written, there is a statute with
Yep.
just US. For some reason, I thought that the statute said, US and Vermont, as long as Vermont was flown at a
Vermont
slightly
always has
lower.
3 float. The state
But
flags are
I-
always lower.
I haven't actually looked at the statute, but I thought that was,
The statute is, it says that every school must have a flagpole that flies the US flag
okay,
and the Vermont flag. It doesn't say you can't fly anything else.
Well, this doesn't say and the Vermont flag.
right. So
No,
I don't think, what I'm
it must be
questioning
just
is,
US flag.
could we even consider not flying the Vermont flag? I kind of,
I don't know.
I think
I'd have to look at that.
yeah, but I,
Statute
for
again.
some reason, historically, in my mind, I thought that there was a thing about the Vermont flag.
Yeah.
That feels Googleable.
Yeah.
Yeah, Google, let's see
Okay.
what Google
Well,
says.
let's put that on sort of,
Okay, but
let's get through this. Okay, so
Social
Caitlin, you're
significance.
helping us get organized on topic.
and are we using the word social significance instead of the word political? Or should we leave out an adjective?
Well, it's interesting because if you've left out the adjective, you could vote to fly that IB flag if you wanted to with a supermajority.
Well, somebody could say, what about the word educational,
Significant, yeah.
political?
Right.
So the flag, the policy or the flag display, the actual language is just mandating the US flag. It's not mandating the Vermont flag.
Oh, it doesn't. Oh, okay.
Okay,
But it
Um,
seems like almost every school does include
Yeah,
that.
it's
Yeah.
common
yeah,
yeah.
practice, so.
and we have 3 flagpoles, correct? We're not including any other flagpoles in the
Just, this is
discussion.
just the one in front of the building.
And there happens to be 3, and there's no other current,
What are the
front of-
3 you're talking about? At the football field?
in front, we're talking about the 3 in front of the high school entrance.
Are there 3 in
I
front? I
thought
thought
there
there was
was
just
only
one.
1,
There's 3 on the football field.
okay,
There's one.
There's
in
only
front
one
of high
on.
school.
okay,
There's one pole with 3 flags
with
on it.
3 flags on
They're
it, okay.
stacked.
And we have to consider that the other schools will be following this policy as well, and they all have their own flagpole.
Mhm.
One.
One flagpole,
Okay.
okay.
Yes, but
They may not want to do
But
this,
if
but
this is, but you have to remember, this is the district board.
right,
This is a district policy.
Right.
So it's no longer like when we had all the individual boards and they could change the policy to fit them.
uh-huh,
If the policy is adopted by this board, it is the policy of the district.
right.
They, like Bridgeport can't say, well, we don't like that. We're going to go do our own thing.
Yeah.
They have to follow the policy.
So if the high school students make a request, and it's mainly the high school students who are behind this, can't we just let the high school do that? I mean, and if Bridgeport decides their student body wants to do something on.
We don't know what policy we're recommending
Right.
yet, so we don't know what we can
Right.
let them do.
That's a
Yeah.
good detail, though, that would it be, one school does it, it applies across the district, or each school individually, each school body would have to then. So that's a
Yeah.
good detail, though, to consider.
Option, okay, so number 3, USB Vermont IB only, option to erect
An alternative
an
flagpole.
alternative flagpole, okay,
So that's basically what that one is saying.
okay.
But there's a second paragraph there that I need to read more closely.
This is more the wording for the motion,
Motion to accept revised, okay,
which is,
prominently display a Black Lives Matter flag, but this is not the policy.
Right.
This is asking to fly a flag or sign on the entrance circle for a duration to be determined by the superintendent. Black Lives Matter flags shall not be flown from the official pole, which flies the American flag, Vermont flag, and the IB flag, but shall instead be flown or displayed on an alternative
Yeah.
pole. So this is
That's a motion,
this is a motion to fly BLM flag on alternative pole / location.
right,
That's what that is.
okay. And that, but that still goes into the alternative, the third,
It would require.
a motion specifically for that,
Mhm.
if we wanted just to. And I guess I don't want to just focus on just the BLM because there's going to be other requests
Mhm.
along the
Right,
way.
well, this motion is specifically
Yeah.
about the BLM.
Yeah, so, okay,
Yeah,
and
So
then,
then 4, the board determines that the official MUHS flagpole is reserved only for flying the American flag, Vermont state flag, and the IB flag. But decides to designate an alternative pole or space.
so that's basically the same
It's the same
thing
thing.
as number 3. Just different wording.
Yeah.
But it does not have in it. The motion is totally different. Motion to accept revised draft flag policy and direct policy and governance committee to develop a policy.
I don't think we need that at all because we've already been directed to develop a policy.
Well, this is what the board would be telling us.
Right.
So that to develop a policy by which student requests for displaying flags, banners, or signs in an alternative location that are consistent with the mission of the academic goals of ACSD can be approved.
This is about board approval for students to exercise their own voice.
Yeah,
I feel like that's a layer of, why does the board need to approve? Students already have an opportunity to use that.
Students have their own policy around student voice.
they do. And I think that we can use that policy around student freedom of expression. But it needs to be tweaked a little bit because it's only about media. It says only in regard to media. So we have to include, public displays or what other form of expression they want to use. It's not just media. So that is an option for us to go with student self-expression. And then giving them.
But we already have a policy, so it's not involved in our flag policy.
Right,
That's
so
a
what
different
we're-
conversation.
What we're saying is take the student voice policy and add into it expressions of flags and such, so that expanding that one. And then make it a policy for the board about, that's district-wide for the board, for the flagpole. So we're taking the student voice and keeping the student voice with the student voice policy. We're just making that bigger. And then we're keeping the board strictly in the board row.
I'm not sure you're making it bigger. Right, if you add language about flags specifically in the student voice policy, are you actually adding more constraints to them?
No, because
No.
right now it's just this media in regards to media. And so student newspaper, essays they may write, posters they may put up in the building. It doesn't include marches, it doesn't include demonstrations, it doesn't include putting something up publicly in front of the building.
so effectively, they don't have a right, that there could be consequences for doing those things.
Well, they may be restricted just because of the policies we have in place, but if we open up the opportunity for them to, broaden that, the ways that they can show their self-expression, and then giving them, my thought is giving them that separate space which is their government, their student body place, they can choose, do we want to hang a flag? Do we want to march down the middle of, Main Street? What do we want to do? But gives them the option to choose their form of expression.
We
There's some-
already have that option though. Do we need a policy for it?
Well,
yeah.
that's why this whole thing came up. They were restricted.
Well, they're restricted because we're talking about the flagpole.
Right,
Right, so if we focus on the flagpole and just get that clear,
yeah,
then when we come to reviewing the student voice policy, we can review it with this lens. And
Okay.
consider, right?
Yeah, well, to me, the flagpole itself, when I look at it, there's two issues, is the usage of a flagpole that to some people has a very traditional and exclusive use. And then to me, there's an element of the student body wanting formal support from the board as an entity that governs their district.
mhm,
It's almost not like asking for permission, but it reminds me of when the teachers wanted us to support the whole pension thing. It's like, it's a powerful thing for a school board to come together and go behind someone and say, we support you. So to me, it's like, it's almost not like asking permission, but, it could be a Pandora's box, but that's how I interpret it. Like, because of this, they've chosen something that has multifaceted significance in our culture right now. It's not like a Burger King flag or something like that, it's like,
it's a social movement, right?
yeah, so to me, that's I don't know, and I know other boards have done this,
Yeah.
and some, I've heard questions of why wouldn't a board consider doing this, even if it's not unanimous or a super majority, but to get behind something that's of such significance,
Yeah.
so. It's
I
like-
don't, I don't think that what I was hearing, yes, I was typing, so I can't always connect all the dots. But what I was hearing was that the board is behind the students wanting to voice their opinion, but not necessarily on that flagpole.
The location,
Right, they don't. So it's, they appreciate, they want to support them, was what I was getting, but not on the main flagpole.
But I
and it was
think that,
divided though, 50%, it was
Yeah.
literally 50-50, and
And we have some wording here say that only under some, the board can entertain a request, but it has to be of social significance or of some.
yeah.
But how do you determine social
I know,
significance?
that's where
you
that
know?
gets.
I would
makes
like
that?
to finish doing this process where we
Yes.
understand what each of these is
Right,
asking
yeah.
for. So we're understanding what are the different ways that we're looking at
Great,
this.
thank you, Caitlin.
So will
So
each of
organizing.
these be voted upon?
No,
or-
we
No,
have to
no, we're
bring
just sort of
along-
identifying the
Okay.
differences between them.
So I'm looking at number 5 now.
Yeah,
It is the policy of the ACSD board to support and encourage student speech and to ensure its guarantees provided under the law. When a student group can demonstrate majority student support or some other measurable level of support among the student body of the school for the flying of a flag on the school flagpole, the board shall consider that request. The proposed flag must have a message that is positive, supportive, and inclusive. So this is a little bit similar to number 2.
right,
Except that where number 2, it's the board flying a flag to represent the board
Right.
voice. Now they can fly a flag to represent student
Right.
voice. Am I understanding that difference correctly?
no, that, I agree, because the other one is specifically the board getting behind something.
And there's no supermajority here. There is. so-
Measurable level of support.
No, that's measurable level of support is from the students.
I know, but it can't be 10 students who've made the request. It has to be that they show that they have brought this subject up in student government or in their advisories. And students are aware of what the request is and that they can show that most of the students or a significant number of the students support the idea.
So then, playing the devil's advocate, would we then say that that small group that came forwards, that would that prove measurable level?
I think in the procedure, we'd have to talk about what
Yeah.
does measurable level of support mean?
That measure, yeah, that seems like too vague.
So that's the one where the whole like process below it
Right,
from, I think.
That was from
That's one of the ones we
Colchester.
looked at
Yeah.
before from Colchester,
mhm.
would map some of those details. So I'm gonna orient myself here, even if it's not helpful to you, and I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Number one is just the US flag. That's all
Yeah.
that flies. And I put the question, would we add the Vermont one? Because it would feel strange to pull it down at
Yeah,
this
right,
point.
right, yeah,
But we have to fly the US flag by law.
right,
Mhm.
Okay, so that's like stripping it down to the basics.
right.
Number two is US, Vermont. We're talking about stripping IB out. That hasn't been floated to the board.
Right,
And the board could fly a flag of social significance representing their voice if they vote by supermajority to do so. That's
And
what
what's
number two is.
super, how do we define supermajority on
10
a?
out of 13, isn't
10 out
it?
of
Something, yeah.
13. And believe me, this board, so far, we've never not exceeded. We've
Yeah.
always gone over it.
Yeah, the board has. Okay, number three
Yeah.
is the US, Vermont, IB only, with the option of having an alternative flagpole. And that could, so then student voice could be represented on an alternative flagpole.
right,
That would require some kind of policy probably for, or maybe not, maybe you put up another flagpole and say, students, this one's yours.
Yeah,
I don't know.
but
if-
there'd have to be a procedure. But
Number-
they'd have to go through with their administrator.
Number four is essentially the same as number three above.
Yep.
But
Right.
it's got a different, slightly, a different motion. So one of them had a motion to fly the BLM flag and the other one had a motion to develop a policy for student requests.
Right.
Right, and I think,
Those would sort of need to be merged.
Yeah.
so between 3 and 4, I think the motion in 3 is dangerous because it talks just about the Black Lives Matter flag. And this issue is more than just the Black Lives Matter flag. So if you have a motion that calls that out, then you'd have to have a motion every single time you
Yeah.
want to fly something else.
The
Well,
last one is
yeah.
the one that we were looking at before.
Yeah.
So the last board meeting, we said either we're not flying flags or we are flying flags representing student voice and then thus all of the procedure information that follows that one.
Right.
So those are it's really 4 options.
It's
that we're
really 4,
talking about.
yeah. So 3 and 4 blend together, and I agree with Suzanne about the BLM,
Yeah,
even though that's the flag that's causing us.
Well, at some point, the board might look back at the student's actual letter and say, what are they asking us for? Like,
Yeah.
once we've got our own flag
Mhm.
policy, what about this actual letter that did specify it BLM?
Yeah,
I, jumping on what you were saying, Suzanne, I think we should avoid using a description of any particular flag, like other
the
than the US, the Vermont. But I think that IB should be in the same category as all the other flags. I think there's the US flag, the Vermont flag, and then all the other flags. I don't think IB should be a separate category
Yeah.
because we're affiliated with so many other
Yeah.
educational entities.
Or
So,
accredited by other.
right,
educational
yeah.
entities.
but I
Yeah.
think it's problematic to even use the Black Lives Matter in the policy because it could become outdated within its own movement. And same with IB, that something's gonna happen with the IB flag, but I do.
Well, you
I-
missed when I was here
Yeah.
saying, we can't find
can't even
one.
get it.
We can't purchase them anymore. That old faded thing, we can't replace it.
Well, you could put it in like a shadow box in the entrance.
There is one hanging in the entrance.
Yeah, there you
a huge
go.
one.
Someone could run like with it as a cape through
Right.
halftime,
It's not precious like the American.
Right.
flag.
I have a feeling it's going down.
But when I look at this, that's one thing, is just like, to me, it seems like when we're looking at these, we need to just US, Vermont, and then all other flags, like. I don't know.
So, but let's look at the 3 actions that,
Yeah,
we've identified.
US, and then US Vermont, US Vermont IB.
So we have US flag only, US flag, school board flag, district flagpole with the caveat that we will, as a board, we will stand behind something and we might put up a flag for that. And then the third option is,
Where'd the numbers go?
I don't know,
Wait a
it
second.
disappeared somewhere.
Sorry to interrupt, I just.
Yeah, I
was
know,
trying to follow
mine
along.
flew off too. The third option is district flagpole with an
And they all
option,
changed the colors too.
yeah. With the option of an alternative flagpole for students. Or some other means of demonstrating their.
Should-
No,
But
they're
should-
back. Did you just put them back?
Oh,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know how you did it, but thank you.
so would number 3 actually be US Vermont?
District poll
option to
plus
erect-
alternative. District poll plus alternative.
Right,
Okay,
but I'm just questioning US Vermont IB only.
well, we're
Like,
taking the IB part probably out.
yeah, so
Okay.
so US only, US Vermont social significance, which could be IB, could be Black Lives
It could be
Matter,
any-
it could be anything,
But representing board voice.
representing
That matters.
board
Yeah.
voice.
Right.
And then there's US Vermont alternative flagpole.
Uh-huh.
So anything other than US, so the first one is just the US flag, that's it, no extra flagpole. And with the alternative flagpole, would the alternative flagpole be representing board voice or
That would be student.
Student voice.
student voice?
Yeah.
Okay. But the board voice, there's nothing in here saying that the alternative flagpole would be board voice. That would be just erected for student
Right.
voice. So if the board voice goes out there, it would be on the primary flagpole.
Right,
Okay,
Yeah.
I just,
right. And then the
Yeah, that's
last
for
one,
student
5, is that we entertain a student request following the procedure. The board approves putting up the student requested flag on the district flagpole.
wait,
That's it was number 5. Am I getting that right, Caitlin? I know you're
Yeah.
holding your head like, "Ooh."
No, sorry. You are. I think that is the one that split the board down the middle.
It is. It is.
okay, so 5 is different from 2 in that the third flag on the primary pole would represent the student and not the district.
No,
No.
the student and not the board.
Not, the-
And not
So
the board.
2 is the board voting with supermajority to fly a flag. And 5 is the board running a student request through a process to fly a flag. So,
Okay, so, okay.
so that we're representing student voice on 5 and we're representing board
Board,
voice on 2.
2. And then
Okay,
3 is the alternate.
Yeah, 3 is a different flag.
but
Yeah.
3 is the different pole,
Yeah,
but that's just student, that's not, okay. So that it's almost like there's 3 there's like, maybe if it's like, 1A, 2B. I'm just trying
No, I
to get this
think-
straight.
I
I'm
think-
sorry, I didn't have time to review this
Yeah.
before it came in.
That's
thought
why I
would.
started doing
Yeah.
all this mocking,
Okay.
like highlighting, because I also needed help
Yeah,
wrap my
Okay.
brain around.
so should we take out 4 so that it doesn't get people confused? I mean,
Do we want to take
because
out,
3 and 4 are basically the same thing.
or do we want to take out 3 because 3 has the motion attached to it? That's.
Oh, yeah.
Here's what we can do. Are you okay with me copy? I'm gonna
Yeah.
take this essentially the same as number 3. I'm gonna paste it directly. Oh, I'm not set to do that right.
this is really neat to be able to see it happening.
Where did it just go? Okay, there we go. And then the motions, so we basically have 2 different wordings of number 3
Uh-huh.
and various motions that would go with it. So then this one becomes number 3. Why did that number go? What's up with our numbers disappearing?
Yeah, that's,
I hate to touch it because I'm afraid I'm gonna
Mhm.
totally screw it up.
and did we determine that in statute, there's nothing preventing, so when it comes to like the board and the student voice, you know, when we started this process, it was, you know, the flagpoles, you know, because it's a government entity,
Yeah,
you know, so the school board, you know, it's an elected body, it's directly connected to the government. Is that why it divided the board? Because the
Yes.
student voice is a couple steps removed from the government to have a non-governmental entity expressing themselves on a symbol of the government? Is that kind of the gist of the,
my understanding is the board members who wanted to keep the district pole just for a US flag and Vermont flag is because it was a government and they didn't want to take on any other political or other flavor to the pole. They wanted to strictly keep it as a government flagpole. So that's why they went strongly in that way.
Mhm.
So
And
that's
they-
number one.
That's number one.
and they would not feel comfortable with us as a government entity so, because you know, a group in the government can and often does take a stance on something.
yeah.
So was
Well,
that part of it
well-
is remaining neutral?
I think yes, and also number two is an option for this government body to take a stance.
Right.
Okay, that would be number two. And then, okay, so
And
having,
then 4 would be the government body would take requests and then make a decision as a board whether we would approve of flying a student request. So it's basically what was originally asked of us by the students back in April.
So, but that gets to what I think Suzanne was interested in is how do we actually know what percentage of the student body supports this? So if the board is saying in number 4, we're taking this opportunity to support and amplify student voice.
Yeah.
Is this actually representative of student voice?
Right.
Whereas number 2 would allow the board to say, by supermajority, this is our voice.
even if only 5 students agreed with it, the board could say,
It would be,
it's, well, unless the actual like fine details said that in order for the board to consider request, a majority of the students have to sign a petition or
I
something.
don't think this is about, this doesn't require any, this
No.
doesn't
No.
expect any student request. I mean, there happens to be one right now,
Right.
but there's no student request required for number 2. It's the
Right.
board deciding to fly a flag.
Yeah. And we may decide because there's a flavor in the community or the student body or whatever to
And we
get
just
behind
do
an
it.
issue,
Okay,
right? But that would be a total board decision.
and then whereas 4, it would be initiated by a student request.
And we'd have to go through the process.
I don't-
And,
I'm
okay,
sorry. I
is
don't-
there one where it's like, it could either be board or
I
student
think 4 allows you to.
for,
Well, 4 doesn't allow us, 4 requires a process for vetting a student request.
but is there one where it could represent either? Or as far as like where the original, you know, whether it was a board member who came up with the idea and brings it forward in a meeting to say, I would like to, you know, propose that we consider this flag. Is there an option where it could be, the original idea could be from either?
I think 2 does that.
You think 2
Listen to the
does?
language. I think it doesn't specify where the request comes from. So
Yeah.
it is the policy of this board that the ACSD flagpoles located outside the primary entrance of any ACSD school are designated as government flagpoles. As such, the flags flown on these poles are limited to the flags of the United States of America, the state of Vermont, I'm skipping the IB bit.
Yeah.
In rare cases, the school board may, with a supermajority vote, choose to fly an additional flag for a limited time in acknowledgement of a significant social circumstance. Such a decision will reflect the expression of the board and therefore only the board, and therefore only the board may initiate such an occurrence. So it's that sentence that undoes what you're asking
Mhm.
about.
Yeah.
That's
Well,
interesting.
Yes. So
And the whole,
but could we edit that to include?
well, why couldn't you take
You
part
could
of that
delete
and then
that.
add in?
well,
Peter
why is it a
Conlon's
super
piece.
majority and not a majority?
Well, the
Because our
supermajority
major
is the board
decisions-
vote.
But the major decisions of the board, like the school consolidation, will have to be by supermajority.
So this is being considered at the same level as closing a school. That's interesting. That flying a flag is rising to the same level of significance as closing a school.
Because I think right now, because everyone is, and I'm not saying this to be mean, but everyone is stuck on the BLM flag.
Mhm.
Okay, they aren't seeing that this policy will have far-reaching implications past that flag. All they can see is that flag, and that flag, for some, is inflammatory, unfortunately. And for others, this is our right, and this is our way of taking charge and trying to make things right and, move on. So it is, for some, divisive.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of there's a district south of Rutland where
Mill River.
the,
Who's our other attendee?
the
I just moved it out of the way just so I could see.
representatives on the school
didn't-
board after a certain vote shifted to a very conservative, I see what you're saying. I can, like, if suddenly the board, our board in 3 years' time and 5 years' time consisted of people who were of a very extreme bent, and they decided that they wanted to, I guess that makes sense to kind of protect from either extreme, but
But so could we take part of 2 and combine it? Probably can't combine it with 3. I mean, 4.
I mean, can we just change it to say,
Or
and
two.
therefore will reflect the expression of the board and could be initiated by
You want to try?
either a board member or
A
a
deficit
student
denial.
entity?
You could just eliminate that whole clause.
Or if we're gonna say, if we're gonna we could just leave it open, but such a decision will reflect the expression of the board and can be initiated by the board or
Where are you at?
at the bottom of 2.
Okay,
So if we want this to include the possibility that
good for you, don't touch it.
the
So
I'm sorry, we're
this,
really
we're not
struggling with the mouse.
allowed to act on.
It's been
and
one of
we
those
have to
days,
take
like,
it
all
into
around.
consideration, but I'm just passing that along.
what?
We have a board member that's now making comments on our conversation, so
Where?
it's on my phone.
In here?
Mm-hmm.
So I actually have a process question.
Where are you? Are you in this? You're hosting the Zoom?
No,
So,
no, it just came through.
okay. I'm trying to keep up with you all here. You're very.
You're on something.
I am wondering about process. This is getting a little bit meta. Are we actually supposed to be editing a document in real time, or is that not public facing and so we shouldn't be? Does anybody know?
I don't know.
My understanding is that we can't meet and do something like this without being warned. I'm not an expert, but when I've asked questions about this, that in order to edit documents such as this, we have, as a group, as long as we're in a warned meeting, that we couldn't.
We can edit it because we aren't making any decisions.
Gotcha.
We can play with this, edit it,
Yeah.
but then we have to bring it to the board.
Right.
And the board could say, we don't like any of that and send us back again.
Right.
But
So at
you
some
and
point,
I
we have to
couldn't-
make a decision about what we're
Yeah.
bringing to the board. Right.
Yeah, my understanding is like you and I couldn't sit
No.
and edit this. And even if I, as an individual, sat and tried to edit it, at that, it's I don't know, I'm trying to figure this out. But when Pietro was there, I was trying to
Right.
figure out how do we do Google Docs? And it
I
seemed,
was
You
wondering
can
about that.
only
too.
do Google Docs if
if
the
you're
committee's all
together, okay. So it will say in the edit, like the audit
It
hit
will
trail,
say
what
in-
time. So it will show that this was all happening like during the course of our meeting.
Right.
Or,
So like
yeah.
what I'm doing is, I've just kind of copied and pasted out some of the
Oops, this, I don't know what I was supposed to say. but-
toppings, the way we said,
Okay, so are we doing the right thing publicly right now?
Yes.
Right, okay, so let's just keep going.
Anyway,
Um,
Barb is listening, and if she knows something we don't know, she'll let us know.
Yes, right,
but no, because in this Google Docs, it's sharing and saving all the changes.
It is.
Mhm.
Yeah,
They are in the vault.
right,
They are
they're
permanent
in the
record.
cloud somewhere. So
okay.
We're not
So
really
can we
changing
make
it, just
it,
have
can
it.
we look at which one we're gonna really start to focus on to present to the board? Are we gonna present two different ones? I know we were talking about editing two to include not only board initiative, but looking at a student request as well.
Mhm.
But we could look at the fourth one, which, says we can take in a student request, but could we include, we could combine the two of those and say board or student request. Can we do that?
I think what was trying, I'm making assumptions about
Yeah.
what two is trying to accomplish. It keeps it really clean in that this is just board voice. And if there's language about entertaining student requests, it sort of conflates that. However, there's nothing in there that says, students make a request and we say, well, that's not our process. But now a board member could say, I would like to initiate this. Right?
Okay, maybe if we just eliminate, yeah,
So wait a minute.
How would we say that?
so like one student can come, in theory, representing board voice, one student could come to me and say, this is my idea, and I could say, wow, I really, that really resonates with me, and I could bring it up at a board meeting, even though the original concept came from an individual or a group of students.
It doesn't, yeah, I mean, it just,
So then they would have to go to an individual board.
know,
I
I
think it
mean-
complicates it, like it's
Well, that's
so,
what the students have done. They have brought it to
they
us.
have brought it to the board. It's
Yeah.
just that this too says we're not running that request through a process. But it doesn't mean that that flag could never be flown.
it doesn't mean that, yeah, okay,
It would mean that the board would need to decide to initiate that conversation.
okay. But
Which has
then,
been,
okay.
which has been the hangup from the beginning. The board wasn't not ready to accept this particular request because they felt there was a political message to it. And they did not, so the division in the board is,
I mean, there is a political message to it. I mean,
for this, but almost
And-
anything that the students
Almost-
get behind may have a political message because they're learning to be activists and they want to express themselves, so.
I mean, the US flag has a political message and, if you were to flip it upside down, it has a political
It
message.
can go either way,
and if you
depending
were
on
to
who
put
takes
the-
it. Yeah.
there's so much symbolism, and I think that people take it really to heart.
So
So-
we got to make a decision here.
Yeah, it's already 10
Um,
after.
So we have 1, 2, 3, the alternative, with the alternative flagpole, or 5 that would, going back to the original request, is that we would take a request from students and the board makes the decision. Which is where we are now and which has put us in this place right now.
Where is 5 on this?
5 was
It's not
taken
labeled.
out because we
5 was put in
combined
with
3 and
3?
4.
Oh,
Yeah.
wait, okay,
so 4, which is the old 5, states it is the policy of the ACSD board to support and encourage student speech and to ensure its
Guarantees.
guarantees. That's a little awkward. Provided under law, when a student group can demonstrate majority student support or some other measurable level of support among the student body of the school. For the flying of a flag on the school flagpole, the board shall consider that request. The proposed flag must have a message that is positive, supportive, and inclusive, and be free of overt political messages. So here's a question. When it says, in this one where it says that this majority student support or some other measurable level of support among the student body of the school. This one, if I'm reading it right, could open up every single school to a different flag.
I'm sorry, which one?
With
the
the
4,
4,
if I were looking at number 4 to vote on it, I would be stuck on the measurable level of support, that's not defined.
But that could be defined in the
would be
procedure.
That would be in the, but, and I would also be questioning how do you quantify that something's positive, supportive, inclusive, and free of an overt political message?
Again, that's,
How would you, we would
That
have to
would
do
be
that
in
in
the-
it's in the
procedure.
procedure, and there
But,
are guidelines in that procedure that came from Colchester
Okay,
that outline that.
So,
So,
I mean, so again, my only question about this one is where it says majority student support or measurable level of support among the student body of the school. I mean, if you said of the district, then that would then say that there's one district, one policy, not one district and 9 different,
well, why couldn't each school,
because we're one district, so we all follow the same policies.
but so every school has to have identical flagpoles? I thought we go backing up maybe an hour ago, there was, I didn't think that we were going in the direction of whatever, if something is flown, a third flag, then every school in the district would also be mandated to fly that same flag. I thought that this was more along the lines of, there was a way for a school to fly, if there was, a protocol, a procedure for flying a third flag, but
That,
I
what I'm
haven't-
saying is that this fourth one says that if we were to pass this one, that
Mhm.
every single school, their student body, if I'm reading it correctly, could decide, like you could have, okay, I'm just gonna make it up. You could have one school decide they want to fly Burger King. The school decides they want to fly the Pepsi flag. One school votes on.
that's not social
Coca-Cola.
significance, so let's not.
But as a-
But I'm just using them
Yeah.
as saying that, you could,
That's commercial.
that could become the way this one's worded.
but if,
Couldn't it in the procedure be something to identify or let schools, depending upon their student body, decide if the flag is endorsed by the board, they can decide whether they're going to put it up or not? So if it's the Middlebury Union High School students who are making the request for their school, why can't that school be the flagpole in front of their building that flies that student request?
I think that's why that some on the board feel that it should go back to either an alternative poll or it goes back to an administrative policy for the school.
well, with consolidation where we're at now, that one of the things that I think about is like, equity, and it's like, it can be taken too far in a way because each school has their own flavor. And say MUMS was going to the national robotics competition and there was a flag that represented that. And they decided that they wanted to support the student body and fly that flag for the 2 weeks leading up to and the week after the national robotics competition for MUMS. It's like, but then Bridport Elementary School, maybe it would be a way to educate that school about what's happening at MUMS, but what if at the same time they had
Something involving farm to school.
farm to school,
Right.
or they had an international exchange that happened or something, and there was some symbol where, this international student exchange was happening for 2 weeks, and they
So-
wanted that to be there, I like
Like welcoming our French foreign exchange students.
yeah.
Yeah.
Or if there's a tragedy, I think there was a tragedy in Weybridge, and there's a symbol of that, and for,
But would
You
you
know, a
fly
school
that
to-
on a
on a
public
flagpole.
flagpole?
Right, that's,
Or would you, I mean, in Bridport, if they have something like that, they normally put it on the front of the school so that it's.
Well, again, that's the alternative.
But as an
structure or
example of
whatever.
something that's
Right.
not commercial, that there could be something
Right, well, my
symbolic.
examples were just.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
totally
yeah, there
accurate.
are other ways of doing it too, putting just a banner someplace, but I guess if we're gonna be proposing something where, I guess I don't know. I don't really like the idea of every pole, having to be identical when each school has their own flavor of what's happening in their community. In a way, could there be a BLM flag at one school and a GLBTQ, like the progressive flag at another school, at the same time, or does everyone need to sync up?
Well, that's
And-
where I think your student voice policy,
Yeah,
giving them the alternative flagpole
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
space or whatever you want to call it, allows them that.
That's
And-
what I think.
and it's so different in elementary schools and, the high school is really, they have a different perspective than a K through
Exactly.
6 or K through 5 now, K through 5. So when my son was in kindergarten, if he was asked to vote on whether he wanted a BLM flag, I don't think that he has the capacity
No.
as a kindergartner to vote. So would you leave the kindergarten votes out?
Right.
So as far as like
So-
student voice, if you're trying to get a majority of the whole district, if you have to leave out all the students below a certain age
Yeah.
for,
That's discriminatory.
So
yeah,
could that not be in the procedure, though, that each administration can accept the request from some of the high school to fly it, or should we just go, do we go with the alternative, the district poll, and then an alternative poll for student expression? Well, it doesn't have to be a poll, it could just be a different venue for them to express themselves publicly in a place where it's prominent, not hidden behind a building or
mhm.
in the building. It's got to be a prominent display.
Computer just shut down. Sorry, my battery died.
Okay.
So are we gonna be voting at the next meeting
No, we're
or
good.
just?
No, I told Mary we would
warning.
send her kind of a summary of where we're at and come up with, this is something we would like to put before the board for them to look at seriously. If we choose 2 of these for them to look at seriously and then weigh that, it's not a vote, it's just,
Don't we want them to vote at some point?
We do.
Move through this?
we do. And I'm
I
really
feel like the
hoping that we'll have
conversation's
this done
taking
by October 1st. That's my goal, if that's
Yeah.
possible or not.
Well, but
But we need to have another,
we've only got
Board
one more meeting
meeting to
before
look at
October
it.
1st, so I'm
Yeah.
not sure if that's.
well, or the first week in October,
I think we
So-
said by the end of October.
Do we need to just have one that we choose for the board to vote on about just the poll? Like, that's the first step, is just the poll. And so we as a committee need to put forth the one that we think captures where the board is at, so.
So you're talking about 1, 2, and 4.
Right,
Those are the
but,
ones that talk about the specific poll.
Right.
but
where the
who
board meeting-
chooses which one we put forward and say, this is the motion that's being made? Is it us? Is it the
we
executive
can
committee?
decide to pull from this meeting whatever we want to
Okay.
present to the board.
So what I was thinking when I looked at these, I was thinking that 1 is very, very restrictive and it follows Vermont statute to the T,
Right.
It adds the Vermont flag.
but it adds the Vermont flag. So I was kind of fluctuating between somehow doing the
Alternative.
alternative placement. And then, 4 goes along with the alternative, could go along with the alternative placement.
Right.
But then the other piece that the other one I was thinking of was 2. But then as I got to it and said the board, it selects the board and only the board may initiate.
But we
I can tell you
change
where
that.
that came from. That came from the lawyer. That's the lawyer's comment,
Oh, yeah, I remember that tangent about,
trying to keep us out of lawsuits, I would say.
But the decision is up to the board in that one. But could we add into number 2, that not only is that the board's making the decision, but they can also entertain a request, which is a combination of 2 and 4. But the board has to make the final decision about whether they are going to.
Because there could be
Vote.
something the board isn't aware of that's happening that an entity brings to our attention.
Right.
I think you can do that by striking the last 10 words or so.
Yeah,
Such a decision will reflect the expression of the board and therefore only the board,
Period.
period.
No, and not therefore only the board. So read the beginning of the sentence again,
Such a decision will reflect the expression of the board.
period.
period.
If you
So then we
stop
would be-
there,
yeah.
then maybe it's this, maybe we've eliminated important legal language. I don't know. But it doesn't say where the request can
Right.
be initiated.
But can we put in there that we can, somewhere in number 2 saying, not only is it, in rare cases, the board may.
All right, where is,
So in
No,
rare
okay.
cases, the school board may, with a supermajority vote,
It's,
vote, choose. Something that's in there, whatever, vote to choose to fly an additional flag for a limited time, in acknowledgement of a significant social circumstance. So the only thing that now in that sentence that I struggle with is how are we going to define social? We have to have that.
But that's,
agree with
that can
that.
be identified in the procedure because it's pretty well outlined in that procedure.
could we just say significance instead of social significance?
But I guess I feel like it, not only can the board initiate this, but because we're dealing, it's almost like we're not taking the question at hand that's been put before us. Are we going to take student requests?
This says no.
This says no, so I think we need to either include that in number 2 or look down at number 4 and make adjustments to number 4.
Okay, so let's,
But I don't know why. Like if this is saying that we're not representing student voice on that flagpole. Right? This is
Yeah.
a government flagpole, will represent the government voice of the board on that flagpole. That's what number 2 is saying. And so conflating it with student voice, I think is where the board got hung up.
Is
It
mixed.
is, it is.
this
And
is
so-
a really good point
So we're
because
sending it back
even if
next
we
again.
say in our policy or procedure, it represents student voice, by statute, it represents something different. you
That's
know?
number 4.
So, one way or another, it's going to require board approval.
But I think we're just abdicating the whole question that has come before us by
Yeah.
saying it's only the board, because we're going to be stuck in the same place.
Yeah, but then somebody from the board could raise the issue. The students have already flagged it as important, right?
Yeah.
Flagged it, that was not, wasn't. meaning
That
to
was good.
Wasn't trying to run there.
But we may never have gone to this without the student presenting this request to us.
And they did.
Yeah, and so
So
I
we're
want to
here.
acknowledge that the students have taken the initiative to bring it to the board. And that we now have to take some action on it, instead of just saying, oh, no, we're only going to fly what we think is important. I think we
yeah.
have to put something in there that we are,
Does it have to be in the policy or can it be in the action of the board? Right? Does the policy need to address student voice?
Or is that the procedure?
Or is that what happens in public conversation? We're
I-
having all of these conversations about student voice.
We are certainly acknowledging them and.
And the board could still choose to fly a flag.
Right.
It's just that the policy doesn't specify, the policy, I don't know.
I don't think we should put forward anything to vote on that says explicitly that we cannot entertain requests, that it cannot be initiated by a student. I don't think to put forward, this is our final thought. I don't think that would, it seems like we're far enough away from that, to say that only the board can initiate it or only the students. Is that more for a legal thing? I think
There,
to me, it's either like, it's either we just do USBT, or it seems like the bottom line is we either ask the board to vote on only USVT, and whatever the vote happens, maybe they decline that, and then we come back again. Or we ask the board to vote on yes or no, we can fly a third flag. And then the procedure would define how that third flag is determined. But it seems to me like, I don't know, we could, if we ask the board to vote today on, we will flag only the USVT. I don't know where the board would land on that, but I have a feeling it would go back to committee. If we ask the board to,
Because that's what they've asked us to do in the beginning.
But
Yeah.
I think that if we say
like a third
a
flag,
third flag, then the students and all those people that have written in letters, and sorry, I can't remember all of their names, will be extremely ticked off because they want to see in the motion Black Lives Matters, but this is
that's a
not.
separate thing
Right.
though.
This
We
is
have
not
to
just
first-
about that flag. It is about any and all flags that could
Yeah.
come forward.
Can we first just decide, okay, either the board will vote on just 2 flags, period, end of story, or there's a third flag?
There's an
Uh,
option for another flag joining the flag.
Yeah, there's either there's 2 flags on the pole, there's 3 flags on the pole, or there's 2 flags and 1 on a third pole or
Or
second pole,
Separate space or
separate
whatever.
space. But if we, where, you guys probably have a better sense of where we're at, but would we get a majority vote if we proposed today, if everyone was here right now, we want a third flag on the pole, whether it's IB, BLM, GLBTQ, national robotics competition. Will we permit a third flag on the pole? I mean, I just don't know it was 50-50, but I don't know exactly what in each person's mind drove them to their vote.
I think the difference between 2 and 4 matters. In that,
Well, I'm thinking that it's between 2 and 3.
could be.
I think this whole IB thing needs to be, addressed in some way, but I
No,
don't.
no,
I mean
forget-
policies, I mean the policy
2 and-
proposals 2 and
yeah.
4.
Yeah.
The one
Oh,
where, is it
not the
student
number of
voice or is
flags.
it board voice, right?
Okay, but first, I thought that first we would have to get a vote on whether we have 2 flags on that pole or 3 flags on that pole.
I
No.
don't think so. I
No.
think that they're hung up on, are we talking about student voice or are we talking about government
Government
voice?
voice.
But if the vote is that they only want 2 flags on the pole, then that's irrelevant.
Well,
We first need to have permission to have a third flag on the pole, or, a majority vote that we can have a third flag on the pole before we determine the procedure to get, how do we figure out which the third, or are we gonna even have a 4th flag on the pole? But
Pretty
it
soon you
seems-
won't have any room on the flag.
yeah, it'll be just like, like all the way down, but, if I hear what you're saying, but I'm just wondering, like, do you think that we could vote on just this, taking it down to black and white? Can we have a third flag on the pole, period? And if we can have the third flag on the pole, then that's a separate project.
The board asked us about a month ago to come up with a motion on whether to proceed with looking at the flagpole as it is, or are we going to make some adjustments to our policy around flagpoles? We're already there. They've given us this motion to do it. It's us to decide now what to bring
So
forward.
does that mean it's 3 flags on the pole? That's it? We don't need to vote on that? So
No,
then
I
we
think
would
we have to
eliminate
come up with
one.
a statement or a policy that at least gives them some idea where we're going.
We have to give them a motion,
Yeah,
not
Yeah.
a policy.
a
yet.
motion.
It's a motion of where we're hoping to come back to work and then turn around and come back to them
Mhm.
with a policy. So they've directed us to make their motion to direct our work.
So, can we do this in 2 stages? Can we first have, like, the motion that we are getting, so that we have a third flag on the pole,
or the option to fly
Yeah.
their
Option.
flag.
Can we do it in 2 stages and first establish that 1 isn't even in the ballpark? That Can we do that? And can we just first get a vote that yes, we can have a third flag on the pole? Because if we have 7 board members say no to that, then we don't need a procedure for a third flag.
Okay,
No.
but let's try to get it down to, okay, could we do option 1, number 1 on the thing, US flag only, district flagpole only government stuff. Second option is, are we looking at a way to either add an opportunity to put another flag on with certain, whether the board has to agree to it, which is sort of where we're at, and they told us to come up with a policy to determine how we decide what that other flag is? Or do we go with pole for the district, alternative pole?
Mhm. So then that would still
got
be,
3
now
options.
we have just 2 flags on the pole. So then the second step would be, okay, do we add an alternative flagpole
Right.
or not?
Right.
But it still seems like, they asked us to consider this, but it's not clear to me whether we're gonna have 2 flags on that original pole or 3.
Well, it
And
depends
then,
on,
yeah, we have the second flagpole idea.
are we sticking with just the district flagpole for just government stuff, which is number 1?
Mhm.
Or 2.
Or are we going to,
To the third flag, and regardless of who suggests it.
or are we going to allow requests, either board supported requests or, requests from students to add a third flag to the pole, to the district pole? Or are we going to keep the
The
district
2.
pole separate, have a student have
And
a
then the-
different thing for
Well, okay,
students?
so-
I feel that there's 3 options.
I agree. Yeah, I agree.
So where the reason I think for this last statement in number 2 is that you've totally missed one entire population that could come forward.
Right,
And the community could start petitioning
right.
for flags, not only the student body, but the community. So I think the line, and therefore only the board may initiate, is to say that this is a board poll, this is a board policy, the board will govern that poll. If other people want polls or whatever, they can do like what happened on the football field. So if you put forwards 2, you could put forward a second one. Would mean 2 policies, but the second one would be number 4,
So you'd be adding 2 policies to this?
adding 2 policies. So you could put forward number 4 to the student voice. And then they would
The
have their
number
own
4
poll.
would be in direct contradiction to that
Yeah.
those last words about you can't,
Yeah.
only a board
Yeah.
member can initiate this.
So are you saying that we'd have
Okay,
one
so then-
pole with 3
maybe
flags
it's-
and a second new
So
pole with
maybe
another
then what I
flag?
mean is use 2 for the board poll with the flag and
Mhm.
if they want to fly something, because then it's just board driven, board initiated, board whatever, and then choose one of the 3s
But as in a second poll
as in a second.
or a
poll.
second location, I think students can already use all sorts of locations. They hang banners and they hang signs and I don't know that they need a separate poll. If the board is saying, we control this poll, this is our poll and our government voice, the students have all sorts of
Yeah,
opportunities. Do
but
they need
there's-
another poll?
I think what the students are saying, and I agree with them, that the flagpole has a tremendous significance because it's right out in front. It's not just a temporary thing.
I totally agree with you.
But I think if we just have banners, it doesn't
No, but
say.
there could still be a flag on that pole.
Uh-huh.
It's just that the student voice is not represented on the pole. The student voice is elsewhere and the government voice is on the pole.
So do we want to eliminate an
That's what number
alternative
2
poll?
allows for.
Right, but it allows, then the board is taking a stance, which I think some people on the board are afraid of opening up this quagmire. People are gonna come in and say, well, I want this, I want you to think about this now. And then the board each time has to go through this.
But I
But
can't,
they're taking a
because
stance for themselves, not for the kids.
Yeah, but it broils us in our own sort of divide on what we think is appropriate, what's not, and that's why we're stuck in them.
So then maybe if that's the thinking, then we go back to one, and the flagpole is just for the US flag and the Vermont flag.
So are we eliminating the option of erecting a second flagpole with, as this conversation, that's sort of irrelevant, it misses the point?
Yeah, I think we're back where we,
So we're back to either 2 or 3 flags on one pole.
So I will tell you that the schools that have flown those flags, they have not flown them. Some of them never made a policy, they just put the flag up.
right,
Mhm.
But it was months of conversation. It wasn't just, oh, here, we want to fly the flag, and it went up. There was a lot of angst over it. In some schools that have flown it, there's still people that are really ticked over it.
Yeah, that's,
So it's not an easy decision. And
no matter what we do, people are gonna be upset.
yeah, but if it's a poll that is specific for student voice, their own expression, and like you say, maybe it doesn't have to be a poll. I like the way the hospital has put up sort of a two-sided
Yeah.
flag.
So could we do that on the, the
So
new
that it's just,
signboard?
it's prominent.
But
And-
here's the thing I wonder about. I think you've made an important point when you say that pole that's right in front of the school has, it's in a position of power.
Right,
Symbolically, right? And if we give an alternative pole or a banner or something, does that then we never grapple with, do we mean for the voice of power to represent this, right? I
I
wonder,
see, yeah,
but we are, because the policy is, or the procedure is gonna be such that they have to show us why this flag is important.
I think you're saying but they would put it on an alternative pole.
Right, or alternative,
And
Device
I
or
think
whatever.
that we don't need board voice to give permission to students to put something on another location.
no, but we do need, there needs to be a procedure so that the administration at least knows what's the criteria for students to put this out there.
that would then be their student body and their administration to decide that.
Yeah.
Just like when they did the fence,
Yeah,
that had nothing to do with the board. That had everything to do with the student body and the administration. They took care of that.
yeah,
So they have that ability, and they don't necessarily need the board to give them the right to do that. They've already got it.
And by giving the right, we might accidentally limit them.
so how do we, if we do it that way, how do we let the students know we are in support of what they're trying to do? Because I think they're also looking for us, not only to put a flag up, but also support this movement that they're
That's an
behind.
important question for the board to grapple with.
How do we?
It might not be through policy.
I mean, if there was a march that was being organized by the students, would the entire board show up?
So.
I mean, if there's other, how, and it's, yeah, there's some of these things that I've read really make you think about, the idea of an alternative poll is, some people could interpret that as worse than no poll, because you're giving a smaller, less important poll to a traditionally marginalized group, when what they want is to be not marginalized. I mean, there's all different ways of looking at it. That could, a second poll actually be like, not a positive thing.
If you went with 2 and it is board voice, the policy is just then that the board can choose to fly another flag. Then the question is, okay, we can, do we mean to? And that would be an opportunity to engage in a conversation about what the students have asked for.
Right, and that is basically the Colchester policy draft.
Except that, maybe
Yeah.
that solves it. I think that the distinction then is it's not representing student voice if you go with number 2.
Right,
And number 2 specifies that it cannot come from students. It has to come from the board.
Right.
So then you don't have that process.
Well, and if somebody brought a lawsuit forward, could we even argue that the third flag represented student voice, or would it would they be able to come back and say, I know you're saying that, I know that's your intention, but actually it represents something different?
It creates I don't know, I just feel like the last thing the board needs is to get into these arguments about
Mhm.
different ideas and political ideologies, et cetera. But our students are asking us, we want recognition that this is something we feel is really important.
Mhm.
And we want some way to make it visible to the community that the students are behind this movement.
Well,
So.
okay, let's
well,
just
how
say
we-
this group is behind it. We cannot say that the students and globally are behind it.
No, no,
We don't
but-
know. This group
Yeah,
that brought it forward is behind it.
So number two would allow you to recognize this group of the student body is clearly behind it. They've caused us to have all of these conversations
Right,
about
right.
it. They have used their voices.
right.
And then number two would ask, if you're gonna consider flying it, is this group, is the board group behind it?
Yeah.
And I think that that's,
Yeah.
I think that makes sense. I mean, going back to what you said, there's been an awful lot of discourse over this one request.
Right. But there's going to be other requests in the
Well-
future.
Okay,
yeah,
but
Yep.
they bring about discussion, they bring about conversation. It brings it up. Most people would not have, we would not have had this conversation on the board level so many times if they hadn't brought it forward. They've accomplished a lot. They've had the board
Mhm.
discuss this. They now have the community discussing it more.
Right.
Whether they're for or against, or they're silent because they don't want anybody to know what they're thinking. The conversations are there, so they have accomplished quite a bit.
But the outcome they were looking for was a visible display from the board
But I
that we
think they
support.
also said,
them.
or, a statement by the board. So if the board chooses to make a statement,
but also any policy that you adopt that allows for a third flag means that hasn't been shut down, right? The idea of that flag or another flying. If you are defining a policy that allows for a process by which a third flag goes up, then
Nothing's been-
isn't the next question, do we mean to fly a third flag?
Well, and I think you raise a good point that so much more has been accomplished in the process. And I hadn't thought about it in particularly that way. That if we were to say to the board, let's vote on this, we're only going to fly the US and Vermont flag, then in the future, every potential other flag, regardless of what it symbolizes, would be answered with a form letter saying, thank you for your request. We do not fly additional flags. Sincerely, the board. And in a way, it shuts down that opportunity for engagement and discourse and learning. And is that in the best interest of our students in our district? Like there's this domino effect with these decisions that we're making. And if in the, if we said to the board, let's take a vote, we're only going to fly two. It's just shutting down the potential for what you're talking about, for better or worse, that we could put forward to the board. Let's just keep this simple. We can fly a third flag. We can choose not to ever, 10 years from now, there might not ever have been a third flag on there, but we can choose to fly a third flag, and we welcome the conversations that come along with wanting a third flag, whether it be IB, BLM, special involvement, somebody is a national merit, we get 10 national merit scholars or whatever, I think it's like this third flag thing.
I love the idea of the IB being folded in with that third flag.
Yeah.
Because then if a school feels strongly about that, let it run through the same, whatever the
Right,
process
yeah,
is, let it
whatever the
run
same
through
Run
the
through the same
process.
process, but the IB flag is not at the level of the state and US flag.
Right.
I feel it's in the third, but I do, perhaps it was an error that the third flag went up in the first place. who knows, who's to judge that exactly, but that's that's part of this whole thing. And are our students and are we better for having gone through this process? Is that the type of learner that we want in our district? So I wouldn't want to put forth the, maybe for the board to say we are only going to have 2 flags, period, end of story. We don't want any conversation.
No,
we
that
want
just shuts it
We
down.
want critical thinkers. We
Yeah.
want to, if somebody from the IB world were to do this, they'd be like, why wouldn't you want to even, because it's like a good thing to think critically and,
So can we look at number 2 or are we gonna look at number 4? Because number 4 allows that to happen, right? It
Tell my
says,
daughter that I'm running late.
Yeah, I'm
it's
sorry.
almost,
we are at basically our stop time. We're 15 minutes beyond our stop time. Because the board shall consider a request. The proposed flag must have a message, blah, blah, blah. It basically just says, we will take, I feel like we could combine the 2.
And I don't think there's any
2
circumstance where
and
it hold
4.
up that's not the board's, that's not the government's, if we have a 3rd flag. Somehow or another, it could come around to, it is a government, So I don't think we should consider language where we're kind of passing the buck and saying, oh, those are the students who are doing the 3rd flag. I think one way or another, wherever it comes from, it needs to have like the stamp that this is like,
Can I,
we
So
stand
where did
behind it.
number 4 come from other than Peter Conlon?
it was just Peter. He sent that.
Was it?
I have the
his son?
initials of the board members who gave us
Yeah.
the different
Right, but I didn't
suggestions.
know if he had found that somewhere else.
No, I
or
think he just said,
mistaken.
here's an idea. He wasn't like stuck on any, he just said, here's an idea. And I thought, well, this sort of takes care of what we're trying to do without abdicating our responsibility to listen to our students.
Could this?
I don't want to
be-
shut them out.
Could most of number 4 be procedure and not policy though?
Well, I think the
That-
procedure would have to be more defined.
Yeah.
What does the supermajority or the measurable level of support, all that would be in the procedure itself. The whole thing around the overt political message is another. How do you define an overt political message?
I'm not sure that 2 needs a procedure. It's a super majority vote.
Right. But 2
But-
says it's only the board who will make
But
so we
2
have to include somehow that we will take requests as well. So that's why I'm looking.
Well, that's
at-
why I was suggesting if you strip out that last part of the
Yeah.
last sentence, you're
Yeah.
just not saying you won't accept
Yeah.
requests.
I agree with that. I would have a hard time supporting it when it's that defined. I think we want to, on that detail, leave it open to
So-
possibilities, although I think we should protect against, this is not a community thing. This is a school entity. This isn't in front of the town offices. It's not in front of the congregational church.
Right.
So I do think that we should not be entertaining requests from the community to fly a flag at the school if it's somebody who has no, like, I shouldn't be petitioning the high school as a community
No.
member. If my son wants to do it.
Yeah.
No,
It has to be a member of the
So
school.
should 2 then just say, it is the policy of the ACSD board that the ACSD poles located outside the primary entrance of any ACSD school are designated as government flagpoles. As such, the flags flown on these poles are limited to the flags of the United States of America, and the state of Vermont. And in rare cases, the school board may, with a supermajority vote, to choose to fly an additional flag for a limited time in acknowledgement of the significant social. I'm still stuck on the social circumstance.
yeah.
So maybe
How do you
significant
strike through
circumstance,
on this?
such a
I'll highlight it
decision
and you
will
go to
reflect the
font.
expression of the
Oh,
board.
sorry, format,
This is
and then text.
I think that raises the level of, when you say a significant
And then
circumstance,
there
it
should be
raises
strike
the
through
level of
option.
what we're
On
gonna
mine,
look
I
at.
have it on.
We're not gonna look at,
Oh my gosh, I see it.
you know,
On mine, it's
So
one of the
if
buttons
we
on the
just go to
top.
the word
Yes, I've
social,
seen that too.
I think
and
that
say
helps.
significant circumstance, because how are you going to,
Yeah,
quantify or qualify what social is. What
But I think
social is
again, in the
when-
procedure, we can identify the criteria for what represents a significant circumstance. It isn't a commercial thing, it isn't, a sports team, it isn't
Can you?
whatever.
You move line through the word social.
I think
In the
Lindsay's
top.
doing
Well, I'm
Between
trying, I'm
significant
just going back and forth
and
on an I here,
it.
here.
Okay,
No, not there.
I'm trying to, but it's just, here we go. I think I got this. Oh, text.
and Kayla, I understand, not saying that we're going to open it up for student requests, but could that be in the procedure then, under this suggestion? That the board,
Maybe you have more experience with procedure than I do in terms of writing it. Do you write? Does the
we
board
don't write the
we don't
procedure, it
write
actually
them.
comes from,
The admin writes the procedure.
Procedures come from the administrators,
but we could put in suggestions, right?
which we've never seen followed through on.
Well,
Did
but
ask,
that gives the administration more sort of control and ownership of how this is gonna operate, right? We're giving sort of a broad statement about what we believe is right.
Yeah. But ultimately, it's not up to the district to make this decision. It's up to the board, right?
Yeah.
Because
We
it's a
set the,
government
we set
poll.
the policy about the flag, which allows some consideration of another flag
Mhm.
so
too.
From a
actually,
variety of sources that are strictly based in the school, like,
Yeah,
so
And that would be
Peter
part of
could
the
say, I
procedure.
want to fly this one. It could come from Peter.
Yeah.
It could come from Caitlin. But it can't come from just an unaffiliated random person,
Right.
you know?
and they would have to
but-
present it to the board, and we have to agree as a board that we
Yeah.
are approving that. I
so
think that's-
one thing
We're
I'm
not
going to
gonna-
say, though, this is a board policy. Board owns the procedure.
All right, now we're in a different place, so we could,
We
Put the
will write,
policy out
we
there,
would have
or the
to write
procedure.
the procedure. for it
Okay.
Because of the board policy. This is, because this says, it is the policy of the board that the ACSD flagpole, blah, blah, blah. So it's,
Aren't all of our policies board policies?
but this is around board work
And it's around board voice.
and voice. So I believe we own the procedure on
Okay.
this.
okay,
Yeah, I think it would be weird if this appeared in a staff manual or a student manual or like a training for the administrative office. Like, I think where it lives, yeah, I think
I think this
ultimately
is-
it's a,
This is-
all right, so are we gonna, because we
So
need to really
what
cut
I
this
have
out.
here in the notes is, it is the policy of this board that the ACSD flagpoles located outside the primary entrance of any ACSD school are designated as government flagpoles. As such, the flags flown on these poles are limited to the flags of the United States of America, the state of Vermont. And in rare cases, the school board may with supermajority vote choose to fly an additional flag for a limited time in acknowledgement of a significant circumstance. Such a decision will reflect the expression of the board and therefore, do we want only the board may initiate such an occurrence?
No,
So will reflect the expression of the board, period.
and then in the procedure, we can talk about how people can submit to the board a request.
Yeah,
I've figured out how to add the things that I want, and I don't know how it's gonna show up on yours, but
oh, I just copy pasted and cut.
But
Okay.
can you see now the
Yeah.
things that I just
Yeah.
tried to
Is it in
do?
purple?
I don't know what, it looks black on mine,
Okay. And
so,
I think there's a combination of the two of you have done something. But I think the procedure is going to be critical in terms of getting the full board to support this, because basically, it's leaving it up to the board to vote on it and how we go about accepting a request.
I agree with you there, but I think if we can first establish that we are having a third flag.
Yeah,
If
that
we
there's an
can't-
opportunity to put it.
Yeah, I think my understanding is the policy can be vague, and the procedure
Yeah,
detailed, or you can make the policy really detailed, but then, you know,
No, you want the
Policy
policy
is global.
but I can
Yeah,
tell you that
procedure
the
is
essence
details.
of this one is basically the essence of the Colchester
yeah,
and the Essex Wexford policies, which I have looked at.
And
in
I
detail.
would say it's almost similar to what Rutland had discussed.
Yeah, I
yeah.
think so.
And probably Mill River.
Mhm.
But to just get the board to agree that a third flag can be flown.
Yeah,
If you can't agree to that, then you don't need to go through the process of getting a procedure. But if they say, yes, yes, we're gonna have a third flag. And these are our concerns, we would like the procedure to reflect this. This is gonna protect us in the future, this is, and then that's a whole nother, meeting or 3 to try to iron that out, the procedure that goes along with it,
yeah.
But
I-
I guess, so are we eliminating? When we go to the board, are we leaving out the 2 possibilities of just 2 flags, an alternative flagpole? And are we forging ahead with asking the board to agree or disagree on whether a third flag? Or are we bringing all 3 ideas
I think
forward?
this is
This
a,
would become our motion.
this would become our motion,
Okay, so
because,
Our
and if
motion,
they decide we don't like this,
Then they'll send us
Then we
back.
go
to
back.
then they'll
the
send us
drawing board.
back.
So
So
our
this
mo-
gives us
okay.
one choice, and then we can.
so we're
Lots of
asking, are we gonna move forward with a third flag, period? And then from there, we would, if yes is the answer, then we'd say, thank you, it's not mandated that there has to be a third flag, but we've just created a
It's creating an
pathway.
option for them.
Yeah, we now have the option. We might never see a third flag there, but we have, now we can have a third flag.
Mhm.
And then we come back to committee and we develop a procedure around that, which is a board procedure
Yeah.
for determining what that third flag
Right.
can or cannot be and how it gets up there.
So at some point, looking down the road, but I do want this meeting to end, looking down the road, is we are going to have to think of it, we're going to have to take the student request. We may have to go back and say, these certain criteria have not been met in your request. Follow through on this,
Mhm.
and then bring it back to the board, and then the board still has to make a decision. Do we want the Black Lives Matter flag? But that, at least it's, I don't know,
Right.
we've got some kind of parameters on
Right,
how we look at the
Mhm.
question. And I think since the meeting on the 23rd, when I think you weren't there, but a number of people were really being much more flexible about how they looked at the student request, more open-minded about it.
well,
It still was
yeah,
voted, a tie vote. But I think our student representative and a number of people who did speak opened up the possibility for people to think
Yeah.
otherwise.
well, and I know we have a request that's been presented, but we need to develop, if we get a yes on a third flag,
Yeah,
we need to develop the policy without that at the center of our procedure, without that at the center of the procedure. We need to develop a procedure and perhaps take, 3 or 10. Okay, would the procedure fit this flag? Would the procedure fit this flag? Would it fit this flag?
yeah,
So if we said, just so that we know, we were thinking of all the, more than one, we're not crafting the procedure around one request. That we're
right, it's
Looking
a
at-
general
we're
procedure.
trying to make it a solid procedure that can
Is your
carry
daughter by
forward.
herself?
Yeah,
She's gotta
I
go.
really need to go home
She's
and cook
gotta
dinner
go.
for my daughter.
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
I'm
she's gotta
sorry.
go. I'm
but
sorry
we
we're
like
keeping you
having
so
here
late,
so much.
but you help us a lot, so
Yeah,
Oh, thank
help
you.
us get
I'm-
organized here.
I'm still wondering how much to use my voice in policy committee meetings, so
We
feel free
appreciate
to
it.
give me feedback.
No,
I
we
don't
appreciate it.
actually know. I don't know if you should be sitting here silently, or,
No.
I'm not sure, so I'm
I think this is
totally
helpful.
open to feedback, but right now, I really want to go cook dinner for my
Yeah, go ahead.
daughter. So, do you need me to stay to close out, or?
No,
are you-
I think I can close it. He taught me how to do that, so I can do that. But
I'm
give me that
sorry.
little mouse.
I'm sorry to leave before you're totally
No.
finished, and I
That's
really
all right.
appreciate the care that this team and the whole board is putting into this
Yeah.
topic.
Yeah.
It's-
I appreciate your
lovely.
presence here. It's a good perspective to have. I think, it wouldn't be as much of a quality discussion without some perspective from you,
All of
you.
the
Yeah.
perspectives are
Okay,
fabulous.
all right.
We can have
Really
18 more
It-
people.
it's
here and
heavy,
make it
heavy,
more
heavy stuff.
complicated.
Thank you
Thank God we know
all.
we're in the
Thanks a
government.
lot.
All right,
So
so,
what else did you have on the agenda?
well, there's quite a bit on the agenda. Let me go back to my agenda if it's still open. Where
Where am I?
we are. So I have follow procedure for student representative. We're gonna have to, Peter gave me a document the other day to look at. I was actually surprised to meet the new rep because I had hoped that we would have been introduced to her first, but it's okay.
Well, still, I don't really know her name, unfortunately, because when I go to put her name in the board minutes, I can't understand, because the first time we met her, I was online.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
So,
Wait, so
where, that's under G, follow procedure on student representative and board communication with constituent concerns. Okay. Oh, and the second one is what we talked about the other day. The second part of G was the board communication. That's gonna be a whole nother meeting. I don't think we have time to even begin to go into that. That's the communication, community, that's Mary Heather and. some
but
other
that was the
people.
policy that we had started.
We
but then
started
got
it.
interrupted, actually, because I spent a lot of time thinking about this, why it got interrupted. It got interrupted because of the flag
It did.
policy.
right,
So.
And the
we-
student rep thing, because they both sort of were coming up at the same
Right,
time.
so we
Yeah.
were
Yeah,
working on it,
Yeah.
and
so we just need to spend a little bit, our next meeting. I feel like I hate to ask for another meeting because but I almost think we need another one before another board meeting. And I hate to keep doing.
I'm
that.
willing to come to one, and I'll do my best to not have.
Lindsay, it's your job,
I know.
we understand.
I know, it's just,
okay, so now, wait a minute, you want another meeting before the 27th,
Well,
which is,
yes, our next meeting is on the 23rd. Is
The
that
communi-
possible?
so the Communication and Engagement Committee is on the 23rd from 12 to 1. I don't know if there's anything that we need to give to them or.
No,
receive
we
from
can
them.
only sit in on and listen to it.
Okay, but as far as what the work that we are doing, is there something that they're waiting for
No,
from
No,
us or that?
we have to work on it.
Okay,
Yeah.
so we need to, so in a way, they are waiting for something from us.
Well, they can do
to-
whatever they like, but we have
we're
to
the
come up with the
policy.
policy.
Or would
okay.
would we be giving our things to you? So should it be after the 23rd?
So the way the policy works is that we've got a couple of policies that we started looking at for engagement, and they sent us some thoughts. So it's the policy committee's role to develop policy and then bring it to the board for their approval or their tweaking. And then if they tweak it, then it comes back, we make the tweaks, we bring it back. And when they're finally happy with it, then it gets warned.
So should we be trying to meet on like the 20th, 21st, or 22nd? So that we could then give a draft to the Communications and Engagement
It
Committee
goes to the full board.
to consider on the 23rd?
It would go to the full board.
We'd have to present it on the 27th to the full board.
So we aren't gonna show it to the Communications and
No,
Engagement
and not
Committee
until the
first?
board says they like what we're working on.
Okay,
Right.
okay.
So we're looking at the 27th, not only sending the board the information we talked about today, having a discussion about that, but then also what we're thinking about this board, the policy around communication, correct?
And
Yeah,
I
so-
think that's,
Okay,
okay, so,
But I'm not the agenda committee, so I don't know what's gonna go on the
well,
agenda.
I don't know either, but I mean, Monday is agenda.
Yeah,
For me, Tuesday is budget and policy for the Career Center. Wednesday is community engagement for the Career Center.
these are all after school. I'm
These
assuming.
are all after school.
Okay.
Thursday night, I think I have OT, and then that leaves me Friday. That's me, after school, every night, next week.
Do you have anything on the 16th available? That's tomorrow.
That's tomorrow.
oh my gosh.
Um,
Yes, I have a political caucus to attend, and I'm not telling you which party it is, so
And which, are there any mornings, like 8:30 to 9:30?
I
or
start
8.
work at 7:30,
Okay,
and
would you entertain a weekday? I mean, a weekend?
or do you think we're rushing this, Mary?
I don't know. I feel like we're getting so bogged down and not moving forward at
Well,
all.
because part of the reason we get bogged down was because of this flag thing, which is
Yes, I
taking up so
know.
much of our time.
I know.
But I mean, what I'm saying is, are we trying to stuff in another meeting just so that we have something to present, or could we take two policies that we started looking at in March
Uh-huh.
and share them with the board and say, this is where we started. Do you have any comments? You
But
know,
the three of us haven't really spent time going back and looking at those. And are there any tweaking? Because we never made a final decision about
Right,
those.
right. No, I'm not saying for
Yeah.
us to make any tweaks, because two of those are like night and day.
Right,
Mhm.
So if we bring both of those to the board and say, we've got one that like delineates everything,
right.
and the other one that's not quite so delineated. You know, which direction do you want us to go in?
Yeah.
Because one of them could drive people to drink,
Oh, yeah.
and that's the Maui
And-
policy.
Right. The Mount A policy, right. So, you know, the engagement committee or the community engagement committee, they're putting a lot of thought into what they feel they would like to do, but they're waiting for us to give them sort of a general, okay, this is how we would like our board to communicate with. And then they're outlining the procedures. It's right. I mean, even though we're writing the policy, it's a policy that they have to write the procedure for, because they're going to be the committee, or do we have to write the procedure?
Well, we're
might-
policy
it
and
might be-
governance, so that's a good question.
Well, we do the policy,
Yeah,
we've never really written a procedure. 'Cause
Right.
We've never been asked to write a procedure for a board policy.
but
that's
we're
about the
looking at
board.
possibly doing this for the flag too.
Yeah,
So,
And there's nothing, is there anything that says that we can't or that we shouldn't? I mean, is it just,
oh, that we should
Practice?
write the procedure?
right, is there,
No,
is
there's
it just
nothing-
the practice of the board? Because I've noticed that around the state, boards function very differently and either, there's a,
Because some boards are governance policy,
right,
so that's a total different ball of wax, and then others are
Yeah.
rules.
yeah, it seems to me that the communication committee has been putting a lot of thought into effective ways of communicating with the public. If we write a policy that reflects kind of the overarching desire for the board to communicate with them, it seems like they've done a lot of the work to think about the best way to
Mhm.
do it. So I feel like we could look at the two policies, keep out procedure, but just a general statement about how we communicate. Some of it's already in some of our
Well,
earlier
There is
policies.
already a policy on communication.
Right. In our ACSD policies already. They're
is-
embedded in a couple different things.
But no, there is, in that Excel spreadsheet that I sent out,
Oh, the one you just sent out today?
I can even find it. No, I have to remember it now.
wait, where, from today?
I sent out,
She sent out something earlier this afternoon.
Oh, okay, yep, 319, I think it's. So where are you, okay, I just got into that document. Where are you looking on the document for?
I'm looking for it right now, was it, what time today?
This one only lists A1 under board policies, but I know we have many others. Where are, let me see.
Why can't I find it? Suzanne, I put you up on here as a search and it's not coming up.
Okay, so, okay, I see. I just need to scroll down. So community engagement and vision, A23.
yes,
Yeah,
okay, Philly phone, it's me, but why won't you let me, there we go.
Suzanne, I don't know what is going on. I thought I had started this and now it's not even showing up.
So where is? Oh, yeah.
Can you send it to me again? I just can't find it. Even though I looked at it earlier. I said, I saw it.
Yeah, right.
Wish there were outlets in the middle of the room.
So I do want to end this meeting because we are quite a bit beyond, we're here 2 hours. Can you send us that again?
Yeah.
Just the Excel spreadsheet?
Yeah, and I'll go back and look at my file too for what we had been looking at back in April and May, or March and April. And this is when you were just first joining us.
Was this
Lindsay.
the original spreadsheet that outlined?
Yes,
the
but
required, recommended, where we were at, that was a very, yeah.
but Suzanne had added a couple things recently,
um,
so to make it a little fuller.
So what I added on to it was like your request for how we got to where we are,
Uh-huh.
and a column for I just reshared it with you.
Yeah, I got it. Okay.
I was just trying to open A23, the hyperlink, and it's redirecting me, and then I can't open it. I wonder if I'm doing something wrong.
Oh, so you have the,
I'm looking at the one that was shared today.
Yeah.
Let me try doing it a different way here.
when you say the hyperlink, that's the VSBA model policy?
I think so,
Yeah,
because
they should
that's,
all be linked to,
Yeah,
okay, I think it's just opening up in Word. So, is that the one that you say it's embedded in, or do we have existing ACSD policy?
we do not have a policy on the books yet.
Okay, just.
Although
the-
that we do have policies under our board policy, which is in the A category, where it talks about, it just says conflict of interest there, but we do have like 9 policies in the A
Mhm.
category. If you go on our webpage,
Yeah.
on the ACSD, and there's several places within some of those policies where it talks about the board communicates as one voice, the board communicates
Yes,
through
okay.
the chair, that type of stuff.
A
Okay,
board member cannot represent
their own
their own
opinion.
opinion
Yeah.
or communicate on behalf of the board without specifically being designated
Right.
as so those things are embedded.
But so it sounds like we need to make one clear policy where it's stated all right in one place, how the board will communicate with the public,
Or-
instead of
yeah.
being embedded in
Or
board
those are
procedure.
almost not philosophical, I don't know what the word would be, but I think what we're talking about is more like nuts and bolts, like we get an email, like we all understand
Yeah.
the three to those, but
Yeah,
I think, when direct communication is received, a board member will do this and will not do that. And it's kind of implied that all those other things still exist.
well, that again is the procedure,
That
the
would be
nuts and bolts,
procedure,
right.
okay.
Yeah.
So we need to tease out where the policy lies.
A general statement about how we communicate. And then the procedure talks about that.
The board will acknowledge
Yeah.
receipt of every communication received via email
well, I mean,
or whatever.
Whatever,
for the longest time, it was always the board chair's responsibility to just say, dear Tom, thank you for your letter to the board. We received it and the subject. Because their writing into us is not supposed to be a manner of dialogue. It's like their public comment sessions. It's supposed to be as a way of giving us their opinions, but not to turn around and privately dialogue with them. Does that make sense?
Yeah. But then this whole equity idea and that very few people can actually come for the public comment section of the meeting. So we're providing
Why
other
you-
avenues to
Why
get
do you
the,
say that only so many people, or why is it limited to people coming to the? public
because
comment?
that's, the time of it and the location of it, it's it's a really, it's not a good time. You know, you have to be available at exactly that time.
Oh, it's always been that way though.
Right, but I think that's what we're trying to have a more modern interpretation of communication that like for me to be at the board meetings, I have to do a lot to be here.
Yeah.
It's not that I haven't had an interest in the board,
Yeah,
but it is not at a good time. That's dinner time and bedtime. So, you know, any single parent can't come. Anybody without a car can't come.
Oh, yeah.
Anybody who has a problem with fluorescent lights can't come. When we have it at Bridport, is someone from Ripton going to be able to come in a snowstorm?
right.
It's like, and then the public comments is one way, and we're talking about, well, this is a world of reciprocal communication.
Well, because, so the public comment section is built into the board as a way of hearing from the public,
Mhm.
but not as a manner of discourse back and forth, because we
Yeah.
would never get anything done.
We're not obligated to have a response, but I guess that we're trying to address the concept of reciprocal communication.
Right.
And how could an English as a second language learner communicate to the board? And how could a single parent with 5 kids participate in the
Mhm.
board?
Oh, I hear that.
So anyways, that's kind of what we're grappling with, that to have a policy where we're trying to have better communication, and we're making it an expectation going forward that we're not going to, you know, have the bare minimum of, we don't actually have to reply to you guys.
Yeah, but you know, I think to me, it's a courtesy. If
Mhm.
somebody takes the time to write up a public statement and they are brave enough to stand up and say it either on Zoom or in a meeting, and they're bringing up an issue that they want us to think about, at least acknowledging we heard you. It's in, we're, as Mary Heather has said, it's in our, you know, our deliberation, whatever
Yes,
we're always considering all this information that's coming in. We cannot give you an individual response on what you just said, but we're taking that in and we're listening. It's just a courtesy.
yeah, and I really like the language that she used in her response, that, so that they know that we are thinking
Right.
about this.
Well,
We're not just.
That's basically what it is, right?
Right, and that's not what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm not saying not to respond, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying that the public comment session has always been, because the board only has so much time to
Right.
get their work done. And if they had a conversation with every single person that showed up. I mean, I used to do the board minutes for Waybridge. And at one point, there was a certain board chair that got on and they would kick me out at 11 o'clock or midnight. And then they would finally get into their executive session.
Yeah.
And I'd already been sitting there since 6:30,
Oh my
7 o'clock. So, I mean, there is a reason, and because our meetings are run through Robert's Rules of Order, that is how the meetings are set up. I know that it's not a great time, not a great time for me either. But, you know, you do what you can, or, you know, like my neighbors in Bridport, they'll call me, or they'll
Yeah.
Facebook me, or whatever. They all know how to find me, and they'll tell me what they want. And, you know,
Yeah.
I'll bring it.
But I also like the fact that a number of constituents have sent us as the full board comments,
Mhm.
right? We've gotten quite a few. That to me is, I want us as a board to respond and say, we got your message. We hear you. It's part of our thinking. It's
Yeah.
part of how we're making decision. And I think that's what this communication is about, that in the past, people would get frustrated because they go through this process of telling us or coming to a meeting or whatever, and there was no response. And it's like, come on, get back to us somehow or another.
Yeah,
And so that's what I think this policy is about. And I think our job is to create sort of the overarching, we want to make sure our constituents know that they are heard and that their comments are respected, et cetera.
mhm.
And then the communication committee, they're working on how to make that happen by either the frequently asked questions, they're doing it by the different programs that they're putting on our ACSD website, so parents could go in there and look and see, okay, what are the committees talking about? What are the front porch forums talking about? What are all the different ways that we've been trying to communicate? They have access to it now that we have this form of,
And I think one of those policies, I think is the Mount A one, the one that I died meeting.
Yeah,
Goes into all of that.
yeah,
I mean, it delineates, who's gonna do like front porch forum, who's gonna do Facebook, who's gonna do Twitter, who's gonna do this.
yeah.
How the message is gonna be determined, how it's gonna get out there.
But now that we have a communications person hired, she's gonna have to work with the board communication people about who does what. Right? So that our board people aren't obligated to be on this day in and day out trying
No,
to
it's
communicate.
her-
It's going to be her, a staff person's job to be doing that. So that can be, that's part of the, but that's, again, it's a policy that we as a board are saying, we want to communicate with our public, our constituents. And then the superintendent made it happen. He hired a communications person.
Well, he replaced.
He
because-
replaced the communications person, and now, and we also have a board committee who is also responsible for making board information is shared.
And you also have to remember that up until probably 3-4 years ago, when we started the facilities plan, we didn't get people at the board meetings. They
Right,
only showed up at the annual meeting.
right,
It was once we started the facilities master plan and talking about,
changes. et cetera.
changes and the reduction of the way the student numbers are going down, then people started coming out.
Right,
But up
right.
until then, communication has never been as much as it is now.
right. But also we consolidated the district so that the individual schools didn't have that close contact with their board.
Yeah, that's a
Right?
really good thing.
So
to
now we
keep in
have a
mind.
district board. It's a lot harder to get to those
Yeah.
meetings. It's a lot harder to communicate.
Well, that's what I mean, like, yeah, you've articulated it a
Yeah.
lot better, that they don't, someone who lives in, by Larrabee's Point in Shoreham, it was a lot easier for them to get to Shoreham for the board meeting
Right,
and talk with their friend at drop-off in Shoreham about what happened the next day versus trying to drive over a half an hour in.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have the pandemic and how that's brought this Zoom and like what came up at the meeting with the Q&A.
Yeah.
And, the seminar versus the meeting on Zoom.
it's much more complicated.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
we
Yeah,
have.
I'm
and
not,
then-
I'm not
yeah,
disagreeing with any of it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, just the history is that.
Yeah.
So can we call this meeting? Because it is,
Well, do we need to, are we scheduling another meeting before the next board meeting?
unless we can. Sounds like we have a problem here drafting on Google Docs. Or sharing, can we share what we've already done on Google Docs and then,
Well, just two.
We can go,
if-
we can go back, we can say, go back into the minutes, and those documents should be, I would think, attached to the minutes. If they aren't, we'll have to find them.
yeah. But how do we come together as a committee and decide what we're presenting to the board?
I hate to do it without Suzanne because you have such a,
Yeah.
like, but I think,
I just,
my understanding is you and I could do something in Google Docs as long as it's warm. But I would much rather have Suzanne being a part of
Yeah,
that.
I agree.
I just think that, like I told them when we did the board retreat, that, some things rise to the front and push other things backwards.
Right, so when's the first meeting in October? That's,
That's the third Wednesday. We set the third Wednesday of every month.
yeah, so we're even missing the third, the meeting, the second meeting. I mean, we've got the 27th of September. And then our next meeting after that is the 4th, is that correct, of October?
It'll be the second and fourth Mondays.
Right,
So it'll be the 11th and the 25th.
so we'd
But the
still be
11th
missing our next meeting.
But the 11th is veterans.
Right,
So I don't know if we'll meet them or not.
no,
Well,
but that means we're missing 2 board meetings to let them know about what we're thinking about the communication policy.
So if
So
we
that's-
want to keep on a Wednesday, I could.
We have a couple early release days. Could we take advantage of that or does that get packed for you?
That doesn't affect me.
She's,
Okay.
yeah, how about the 29th,
Of which
I was
month?
gonna say I could
September,
do the 6th.
the 6th? The 6th, okay.
That's a
I don't know.
Wednesday.
That's a Wednesday. It's before, no, that's after 2 board meetings though.
No, it's not.
Wait a minute, I've got a
It's
board
after
meeting
one
now.
more, right?
So
Wait,
So one's the
wait.
27th
Right, we go the second and fourth Monday.
Oh, and the 18th. Okay. For some reason, I have it on the 4th here.
So we do the 13th and the 27th, and then we go the 11th and the 25th. So if we met on the 6th,
And then we're gonna meet on the 13th again?
no, we will meet on the 20th, because that's the third Wednesday.
Oh, okay, all right. I didn't
My
know
God, the
that.
13th, I'm at a board meeting for the cruise.
Can you, oh my God, like
I know, she's a meeting. All right,
I'm like, my head is spinning just thinking about it. I have other things that make my head spin, but not the amount of these meetings that you do. So, all right, so are we still looking at a Wednesday, just a different Wednesday before
Could we add in the 6th?
of October?
Yeah,
That's an early release day. You're talking about 4 to 5:30 that day? I'm available. I just need
yeah,
to,
I
you
mean,
know,
I've got a student up until 3:30, so I could do 4 o'clock that day if that works for.
I think so.
Yep.
I think so. I mean,
on
yeah,
the 6th?
so that we would have one board meeting. There'd be one board meeting, one communications and engagement meeting, and
Well,
then
we're
we'd
adding
have,
one meeting on the 6th because we're still gonna have a meeting on the 20th. We're adding a meeting in here.
so the meeting on the 6th would help us prepare something to present on the 11th.
Right.
Right.
Okay, that, so,
And so I will have to remember to tell them for the agenda setting that, and we can mention that at this meeting that we'll meet again on the 6th to have
Yeah,
something to present on the 11th.
so as a result of our meeting today, are we going to be asking the executive committee to put number 2 essentially on as a vote for the board, or how, what's,
yes, that'll
At
go
the
to the
next
agenda committee.
meeting? Okay,
Yeah, and
okay.
they'll put it on next agenda as a discussion point.
Okay, so on the 27th of September, we wouldn't be voting on it. We would be discussing what we came up
Yeah.
with, asking permission for 3 flags,
Yeah,
pretty much black and white, and that there might be a second step. Well, there would obviously be a second, we'd have to work on the procedure to follow if they say yes.
so
So,
Suzanne, let me
but
ask
it's
you a
not-
question on that specifically. Do we have to write a motion for, or is it just a discussion point on that,
So I think,
my battery just went out.
so I think they want a motion, but let me, I can share this with Peter, Victoria, and Mary
Okay,
and say, do you want a specific motion?
okay,
Or is this what, these are our thoughts around the way the policy's going? Do you
Yeah.
want just to ask them to accept this idea? Or they could just turn this whole thing and say, I move that the policy of the board is, and then read the whole thing out.
so do you bring that to the agenda committee?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, I mean, if we could go to the motion and say, can we take a vote on this? If we could get a yes or a no, then we could have a more, we could move forward with procedure or not. You know, either,
Exactly,
but if I don't know, if
but you
we,
have to have a motion first and then warn it, right? So we wouldn't really be
No,
able to
no, no.
vote on it until the 20th,
Well, because this isn't a written procedure,
right?
so,
So we're talking about the flag policy, right?
right.
Yeah,
We could turn this statement into a motion.
right,
And then it comes back to us, we write it up as in the procedure format.
okay,
We'll probably have to have Pietro's help on it. And then it would come back to them for an initial review. And then it would come back to us if they have any changes to it. And then it would go back to them for a final warning with
oh
adoption.
my God, that many meetings before we could even work on the
This-
procedure?
Well, no, we
Or-
could be working on
Okay.
that in tandem. But we've already got a good start.
Yeah. My hope is to find the most efficient way to get a yes or no on like the most, like, whether we can have a third flag or not,
So.
so that we can then
so
work
if
on the
we do-
procedure.
If we do this, put this through as a motion
At our next meeting.
as our next meeting, this is the basis of the policy. So
Right.
we just have to have it written.
As a motion.
correctly.
Okay, okay.
Okay,
All right, so we're doing, so you're gonna figure out a way, like, what's the most effective, efficient way that we can move this forward on the 27th and follow Robert's rules, and then we're gonna come back from whatever happens on the 27th of September, and we're gonna meet on Wednesday, the 6th, from 4 to 5:30, or hopefully just 4 to 5:30, but whatever.
yeah,
And then we're gonna take what happens at that meeting and bring it to the next step, and also be working on these other things.
communication.
So the
Okay.
question would be, and I can ask Dr. Burrows, this is if this passes, can we just dump this in the lawyer's lap and say, do the legalese thing around this?
Because it's
And-
very, very similar to the Colchester thing. It just needs a little tweaking.
Or maybe we just take the statement and then slap the Colchester one on and put ACSD instead, and
Right.
then, so it doesn't take a lot of time, because if we really want to get the engagement committee their stuff back, we've got to get this off our plate.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We do.
And so really, we can't work on a lot more until this is gone.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and the procedure that goes along with it, I anticipate there to be some back and forth that okay, based on what we heard, this is what we're putting forward. Oh, okay, we'll make these changes. Okay, here are the changes. We're gonna put this forward, and
Does the
then,
board have to
take
vote
it-
on the procedures?
No,
Okay,
not typically. The board likes to be involved.
yeah,
But where this is a board, strictly about the board and their policy, they might want to have more say
Yeah,
in it.
yeah.
But I think we've got a lot of that written through the Mill River and the Colchester one, so we make it as strong as possible. It should be able to.
so when we present to the school board on the 27th, just the discussion about this, we need to have those talking points. So that we can say, this is what Mill River has done, this is what Essex has done. I mean, some of that is already on the research document I have, but I'll look at it more more fine tune it to say the research, the procedures that we're going to follow, or that we hope to follow, will resemble what's already been done in these other schools.
So
on the 27th,
And just as part of the talking points,
I don't think we need any talking points. We put this out as a motion.
yeah,
And then say, we'll come back to you with the policy and a procedure
okay,
based on, and you can list the other
Okay,
schools
yeah.
that have got it all
right.
written.
and you've already supplied a lot of that background. If people chose to read it, you could resend the email to
Yeah.
say, by the way, this is part of what we're considering in addition to the
Yeah, is
public
that okay to
comments
do?
and,
Should be,
Yeah.
because you're sending it to the whole board.
Yeah, okay,
yeah. But I don't think I mean, I think
Or
if
you
we,
can ask for it to be attached to board pack.
right, okay,
yeah, but I don't, I question discussing procedure at the on the 27th, because I
No,
think that'll
no.
make things muddy.
but so that they know we're following sort of a precedent that has
Yeah.
been set.
Yeah, or even to just say, yeah.
We'll be
So,
I mean, we could just say that we'll be looking to, say, Colchester, Mill River,
Right,
and whoever else.
Essex, Westford, South
Well,
Burlington.
let's not, but not all of those have been vetted.
They've been approved by their board.
So, but
Mhm.
Mill River, we know Pietro worked on,
Okay,
and didn't he work on Essex?
I think so.
So we could say we'll be, reviewing the Essex and the Mill River.
Which Essex? There's more
procedures.
than one Essex. Isn't there?
No,
Well, there's
Well, there's Essex.
What is it?
there's Essex Town or whatever,
But
there's.
they're
yeah.
all one district, that
Are
district,
they?
but I think there's Essex, Wexford or something.
Yeah.
well, whoever has the procedure,
Yeah,
so it'd be that one, and then we'll say we're gonna look at this one and Mill River and look to use those that have been vetted for a procedure.
okay,
And well, and also I think so if I look at like number 3 or 4, 5, if I look at the other ones where like other board members had their initials after them, it's my interpretation that what they offered was based upon their response to some of those. So I think we're also taking into consideration some of what's already been processed from that over the last few months, that we're even farther along than just looking at those. I mean, that's what we're going to look at when we choose our language, but I think we're already taking into account some reactions to those documents, not just the documents themselves, but we're
Right.
trying to figure out how to
Okay.
make those our own, you know?
So I just want to make it clear that when I take some of that and put it together, I want you guys to look at it before I send it to Mary
So when do you need
or the
us
agenda
to?
committee.
Okay,
But am I
so
against, is this against the law for me to,
we can
have you
look at
guys-
it, we can't discuss it, I don't think.
We can't discuss it.
So you could send it to me, but if I were to call you and say, hey, Mary, I'm taking a look at this right now, and I really think paragraph 2, my understanding is I cannot do that because then it's a quorum and it's not
but
warned.
if it's a public document and we're editing it online, we
Only
can't do
at
that.
a public meeting.
Oh, okay.
I don't think that,
So what if I write you guys like, no, this isn't what we said.
so when will that be?
You know what I mean?
So the-
When will that be added to board pack? So for the
Well,
27th,
that's right. I don't want to send something to board pack unless we've all looked at it.
So for board pack, all you have to send Mary is attach those 2 procedures from Essex and Mill River. And you can say, we're going to be looking at these 2
Okay.
to develop a policy, a procedure for the policy.
I mean, if you need feedback from us, I mean, could we have like, so that you don't, like, you have all these meetings and stuff, you know, like a half an hour Zoom meeting or something, just to get responses to yours? That's the tricky thing with the 3 of us here,
Because
like,
you also, if you do a Zoom meeting, then it has to be warned.
it has to be warned in
24
public,
hours.
but
So it has to be warned 72 hours in advance for a regular meeting. If it's an emergency meeting, you have 24 hours to warn it.
so how do we
Has to have
get
a
her,
public comment.
how do we get her the feedback that she needs when she,
I think what we just said is just to put out those 2 documents and say that, you know, we're gonna be using these 2 to pull from.
To guide us
To
through.
guide us to write the procedure for the
Mhm.
policy.
but what about the end language of the, well, I guess okay,
The
okay.
end language for the policy won't be developed
Until we
until
get the
after
motion.
they
Okay.
approve it. And we may not.
I thought-
Since we don't have permission yet to go with this one,
Uh-huh.
maybe we don't even tell them which policies or which boards we're looking at, because nothing's been approved yet.
Right, but there's going to be discussion about, well, what does this include? If we are agreeing to do this possible third flag, what does it look like?
So
That's going to
then,
be part of the discussion.
so then if that comes up, you can say, at the last meeting,
Yeah,
I sent you these documents.
right.
And that's already in board pack, that's
And-
already, they
And
already
then
have
they-
it.
And then and you can say, at that point, you voted to have us make a policy based on this.
Yeah,
So if you're wondering what the process might look like, go back into your board pack and look at Essex and Mill River, or whichever 2 we choose. And say, we'll be using those to move it forward.
okay. Which is, well, it's actually the Colchester, Essex, and Mill River.
Okay.
You guys, man, this is
my
the
God.
marathon meeting.
All right, I'm gonna,
Okay.
can we call the meeting?
I thought we called them.
No, we're on, oh, actually, no, we're still recording.
Oh,
Oh my
um,
gosh.
So, a meeting adjourned at 6:40.
All right, I need to make it to the co-op to get my,
Oh,
I
boy.
have some groceries.
I had to get to the grocery store because I'm almost out of food in my house, other than
Ugh.